Good evening. Today is Monday, November 8th, 2021. The time is 6:07 p.m. and this regular meeting of the Romulus Community Schools Board of Education is called to order. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Wester. Present. Terrell. Kennard. Here. Piles.
Present.
German.
Present.
Evans present.
We have a quorum. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible. So sorry. Excuse me. First item is acceptance of the agenda. Is there a motion? I move that the Board of Education accept the meeting agenda as presented. Is there support?
Support. Kennard.
Moved by Pyle, supported by Kennard. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Yes. Pose.
Okay. So motion carries.
Can I request an amendment to the agenda?
We could have, yeah. I mean, you can move to amend it.
I would like to request an amendment to the agenda. My request is relative to the action items to hire interim director of human resource, interim director of instruction candidate, interim principal, for the reason that we don't have a contract. We haven't been able to look at the contract.
So
I request that we amend it to take those off or possibly consider, have dialogue about it, because I want to see a contract.
right. So we will dialogue, but we can. There's a motion by Ms. Terrell to remove from the. I'm sorry. There's a motion from Ms. Terrell to amend the agenda. Is there support? Support. Moved by Terrell to amend the agenda, supported by Wester. All in favor, say aye. Opposed?
Oppose.
Just so that we're clear for the record, those in favor signify by raising your hand. And those opposed, raise your hand. Motion to amend the agenda fails, but Ms. Terrell, we will make sure that we have discussion on those items. Next is acceptance of the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine in nature by the Board of Education and will be acted upon by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items. If any member of the board or any citizen requests discussion of an item, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will become the first item of business under the report of the superintendent portion of the agenda. So moved. Is there support?
Support. Kennard.
Moved by Pyle, supported by Kennard to accept the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. First tonight, we have a presentation. It is the State of Romulus Virtual Learning Center, and we have Ms. Renee Gowan, the director of RVLC, with us tonight. Welcome, Ms. Gowan, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. We good? Okay. Hi, happy to be here. Thank you so much. So, state of our schools. We're going to actually talk about 3 different programs tonight, if we may. So, yes, we do have Romulus Adult Education, which I have to be careful. I've been told I talk about that one too much. We do have Romulus Virtual Learning Center, which this year has kind of grown in its meaning, but as I'm going to refer to it tonight, we're talking about our alternative virtual high school. But what we've also started working with this year, very closely with Mr. Parker, to work with the K through 12, we are handling the 9 through 12 virtual high school students as well. So we've kind of, if I think Mr. Cooper has my presentation, I'm sorry, I have to look over your shoulder. You'll see state of our schools. We have Romulus Adult Education, Romulus Virtual Learning Center, our alternative high school, and then Romulus High School Virtual, where we're working. So really 3. Thanks. Coop, can we go to the next slide? I'm not going to use the foot stomp. That just doesn't seem nice. So the first school I'd like to talk about is just something that's relatively new to us, working with the high school virtual students, and we're very used to working with the alternative students and of course the adult students, but working with standard, typical, traditional 9 through 12 high school students was new to us this year. So it's been, first I have to say, just a real pleasure to work with Mr. Parker, Mr. Petty, and Mr. Pate. It's kind of a tongue twister because they're all P's, but really it's been really seamless and easy to work with them and make sure that we're offering the best program possible. So when Mr. Petty first started, he approached us and we did a informational session for the upcoming freshmen and seniors. I think we did all the grades. We didn't have too big of a turnout, but this was from that original slide. And he just, again, made us feel very welcome. So we just said in this, like, welcome to the new RVLC. And we want the 9th through 12th graders to know that they are allowed to participate in things like graduation, right? That's very important. Some of these virtual high school students, they want to walk with their classmates. And I know that that seems something minor, but for us in our world, and being at our graduation, it's a very big deal. So we made that agreement with Mr. Petty right at the beginning that these students can still walk, they can participate in sports, they can do clubs if they're in good standing with us. So we wanted that out there right at the beginning. I know as a district we have some mixed feelings about Edgenuity. I'm always a big proponent of it. It works really, really well for our alternative and our adult students. So the slide just starts off kind of telling people how we look at Edgenuity, the availability. We have to remember that a lot of our alternative and our adult students have full-time jobs during the day, they have families, so it's not possible for them to log in at that 8 to 4 time frame. So to have the availability where it's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year is huge. We do see adult students working on Christmas Day, on every holiday at 4 o'clock in the morning, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so that's big to me. I really like the amount of elective credits that are available through Edgenuity. It's not the same as face-to-face, and I realize that everybody needs an option, and I love that our district can offer that option, but we want people to know that just because you're choosing the Edgenuity platform, there's still a lot of options available. The classes that you would take face-to-face, be they English, math, science, social studies, art, foreign language, are available on Edgenuity, as are a whole plethora of other elective courses, which we'll show you on the next slide. The other thing that we're really excited about and we really brag about in our program is the availability of our teachers. So they are available via text, via email, 10 to 12 hours a day, every day of the week. There's very, very few times that they're not available. So, and we also like with Edgenuity that at any point you can log in and see the dashboard and see exactly what your grade is, exactly how far it is. There's no secrets. So of course we will still send out report cards. We'll do all that, but you don't need to wait. You can check Edgenuity any day, any minute, right now. So I think that's pretty cool. So Coop, if we go to the next slide, it's hard to see, we've just listed all of these elective courses that are available. And if you click on the link up top, because I have the most amazing team of people working in our wing that are just so tech savvy and shows me how to do all of these wonderful things that Coop has shown them how to do. It just shows you a list of all of these, and we don't need to click on that, Coop, I'm sorry, that's okay, but just shows you all of the elective courses that we have available, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. It's a bragging point for me. So, and when we were at that first informational meeting with Mr. Petty, a lot of people wanted to grab the handouts to see this. So, I'm always going to stand on this platform and tell you what a good thing this is, because I think it is. So, can we look at the next slide? Thank you so much. So what we want you to know is that these students who are at Romulus High School are coded properly. So they are coded as virtual learners. And that is, we have a pretty close relationship with our regional auditor, so I have the starred email from her that this is the way to do this. And the real reason we wanted to do this is frankly because there's two different credit tracks that we're dealing with, right? Our alternative students approved by the board are on an 18 credit track diploma. And that took away some of the electives, rightfully so, because they're behind in their credits. So if we can shorten their requirements and do so and still give them a valid diploma, we did. But some of these high school students don't need to be on the 18 credit track. They can stay on that 22 credit track. Another thought was what their diploma would say. That these students, their diplomas, if they're on the 22 credit track, their diploma is going to say Romulus High School. Now, I can tell you that a Romulus Virtual Learning Center diploma still means a lot, because it does, but there is a difference between the two. So that was one of our reasons for doing this. We made sure that we coded them properly. So that's very important to us and to our auditors, of course. And again, just to reiterate how closely we've been working with the new principals of the high school and with Mr. Parker. Especially the counseling team. I mean, Miss Moore, Miss Burton, and Miss Pearson have been outstanding. Tammy Garrison it's just, it's been very easy to work with. It's kind of, we're making sure that things are done well, and these people are just really wonderful to work with, in addition to the special education department. It's very important that we do things the right way. And so working with Angela, especially with Latoya and Takia, I think it's a really positive, daily almost relationship. I just want to mention that for the high school virtual, we do have 90 students, 9 through 12th, who are virtual right now. And I believe those numbers would grow. We just have to add some teachers. So we do now have a new teacher who was hired specifically to work with the high school virtual students, and she will start on November 22nd. So we're pretty excited about that. We did go through the interview process, and I understand that there's some issues with hiring right now. I hate to brag, but we had a really awesome interview process, and we found 2 that worked great. So one started, I'm getting ahead of myself, this is on a future slide, but one started last week, and then we have another one starting on the 22nd. So really growing this staff so that we can hire and we can work with more students and keep that student to teacher ratio at a more reasonable number. Can we look at the next slide, Coop? Thank you so much. So now if we can talk about Romulus Virtual Learning Center, and forgive me, I know the names can be confusing. So this is our alternative virtual high school. Also has 90 students. So 90 in the virtual high school, 90 in RVLC. So you can see why it was important for us to hire 2 more teachers. We had 2 teachers. Our student to teacher ratio it wasn't what we needed it to be. So that we actually have hired a second teacher for the alternative program who had tons of experience in adult and alternative ed, was familiar with Edgenuity, was familiar with MyStar, hit the ground running, and it was awesome. So I'm really excited about that. And I have to mention the lead teacher that we have in RVLC. Forgive me, I have to mention him by name. His name's Dominic Catanzarite. Without him, this would be difficult. He is a really, really, really smart, capable man. So is Rob Barrett. Those were the 2 teachers that we had at RVLC when I was brought on. And just wonderful, amazing teachers who know the alternative program, the 504D, which was Mandarin to me prior to coming here. And now I just feel like they're so helpful. Mr. Catanzarite is working very closely with the high school with credit recovery. So I think that's a really big piece. And I really, I know I'm an overly optimistic person, but I really just have an outstanding team that really excites me. And I just really have to say, kudos to Mr. Barrett and Mr. Catanzarite for doing such an awesome job with this alternative program. They're fantastic. And I will just mention that also, the referral process from when the high school is referring to us and when we may be getting referrals from the special education department, this referral process is just working so much better now. Not that it wasn't working before, but everything is constantly improving, and there's just this open dialogue, and it's just very easy to work with my colleagues. And I feel like we're all very much at the table, and what we want is for our students to succeed, and whatever we can all do to work together to make that happen, and I love that. Coop, can we look at the next slide? Thanks so much. So I did just want to mention, because this is a bragging point to me, our alternative program has recently gotten involved in the Michigan Association for Community Adult and Alternative Program. That's McKay. That's an organization that I've belonged to for many years. That's our State Adult and Alternative Education Association. Mr. Barrett and Mr. Catanzarite just presented at that conference the last week in October, and it was hands down, and I'm not just being biased, it was the best session of the entire conference. They talked to other alternative programs about how to become a fully virtual alternative program. Now, I would be wrong if I didn't say that a lot of that stems from Mr. Cooper right here, who absolutely set this up to be a fully virtual program. But Mr. Barrett and Mr. Catanzarite have taken that and ran with it and continued it. And when COVID hit, there was a fear, of course, but not of being fully virtual. We knew how to do that. And not only that, we can now share our knowledge with others and help other people develop educational development plans online, or a transcript breakdown, or a referral process, or an application. It's all online. So it's just, we've become a fully virtual program. Again, largely because of Mr. Cooper, but continued because of Mr. Catanzarite and Mr. Barrett. So I was really, really proud of them and their presentation. We also are really involved in the Alternative Schools Leadership Network, and I brag about this. I've been told I name drop too much, and I'm sorry, but we are made aware of things before other people. I'll give you an example. The MDE has come out with a new memo that says it changes the way you schedule students, and it wants you to have a teacher of record. And this is something that's coming down the pipeline and is going to be on our faces next year. But we heard about this in the beginning of September, and we jumped on it, and we had some meetings with the Alternative Schools Leadership Network. We even met with some of the outstanding staff members at the high school. We jumped on this. Just last week, everybody else started talking about it. So it's kind of like discovering the band before they got popular. So I feel like I feel very in the know. We're very connected with the Michigan Department of Education, and we're very connected with our regional pupil accountant. So I just feel like we make sure that we know what we're doing. And I like that we're ahead of the ball game, that we for once get to be the program that, well, we can teach you about this because we know about this. So I like the position we found ourselves in. Sorry to brag, but that's what the State of Our School Address is about. Mr. Cooper, can we go to the next slide? Okay, so now I get to talk about adult ed, and you won't notice my tone change because my mom said I get more excited when I talk about adult ed. We have 185 students enrolled to date in adult ed. And 185 students at the beginning of November, and if you jump ahead, we've got 29 more that are ready. And then we've got another group coming in January. They're just all the time. Adult ed is all the time, and it's awesome. We have 27 students right now in our adult ed alternative, and that's just our adults who are ages 18 to 22. You're in adult ed once you're over the age of 22. So, that's a lot of students right there. I brag, not many programs do this. We have open enrollment. So if you send someone to adult ed today and you say, call Renee, we're going to put you on a waiting list right away. And the waiting list isn't long. It's going to be next week. So, I love what we do. We have a great need in this community and in Wayne County in general. If we look at New Boston, Belleville, Wayne, Taylor, there's no adult ed in any of those programs. Do you know we get students that come to us all the way from Warren, Utica? If you looked at where our students are coming from, it's from all over. And we'll tell them, there's an adult ed program in Utica or Warren Woods. And like, yep, but we heard about you from our friend and you're who we want to go to. Well, come on. So I won't belabor that point. Adult ed is, we do offer in person, we have this lab, but our adults for the most part, by and large, are wanting to stay fully virtual. Why? Because we have Chromebooks. Adult ed is continued with the 1-to-1 ratio that the district has done. We're doing that same thing. So if a student needs a Chromebook, you got a Chromebook. And the students have teachers that are working with them and texting them and FaceTiming them and Zooming them and Google meeting them, because we're a Google district. All of these things all the time. They have their teachers' almost undivided attention. I do have 2 full-time teachers in adult ed right now. You'll remember I was a full-time teacher, and we hadn't replaced me until recently. We have a new hire, Ryan Kanzerski. He is leading our GED department, doing a beautiful job. We've had Christina Newsom on staff in adult ed for a long, long time, and she is so beloved. If you've been to our graduation, you see that. We have 5 part-time teachers in adult ed too, and we're looking to hire a career navigator. So adult ed is just, we're good. We have 5 grants total, and I had to give a whole slide to the grants just because I'm pretty excited about this. If we can look at the next slide, Mr. Cooper. Adult ed almost always has had these 2 grants, Section 107 and WIOA. Section 107 is our state grant, and right now we have $296,975. We almost always get that WIOA grant too. That's our federal grant, $96,468. Deferred comes to us when we fully expend our Section 107 budget. If you don't fully expend your Section 107 budget, you are not eligible for deferred. The caveat with that was COVID. They let all of us have deferred budget. So it's very important, I hope I'm using the right language here, Mr. Dixon, is that we do zero-based budgeting. These budgets have to be completely expended to the penny. And that's very important to us because we want to make sure they're fully expended, so we make sure we can keep getting that Section 107 deferred. The 2 additional grants that are new this year, excuse me, are the 23 Plus grant, which, thank you for mentioning at the last board meeting, President Piles. This was brand new to us this year, $50,000. And this was about getting people over the age of 23 with a high school diploma. So we did, we got our $50,000. And wouldn't you know, I got an email last week that said, Renee, the grant's coming around again. Do you want to apply? And this time it's for a full year. And I said, you know I do. And this time I want 100,000. So fingers crossed that we get that. So, you know, and the thing about that money is with 23 Plus, and I realize I sound foolish when we have people in finance who speak much more smart about this, but with the 23 grant, we don't have the same stipulations that the WIOA and the 107 grant has. So with the 23 Plus grant, we could do things like add a coffee bar in our wing, or, you know, we're known for having popcorn, so we can update our popcorn machine. We can do things like that, which our 107 and our WIOA funds don't allow us to do. And I realize how that can sound, but I'm telling you, food is an incredible motivator, and especially for our adult students to have a coffee bar in the evening. So forgive me, we'll have to talk about that another time. And as I should say, we've worked with Sandy, especially with working on these grants, knowing that the checks are coming in and things like that. So I think we've got a pretty good handle on that. We will discuss how we're going to possibly fund our future coffee bar, and this is the first that we've mentioned this. But we like that the little bit of flexibility that we hope we're going to get, fingers crossed, with the 23 Plus grant. Futures for Frontliners is a new system, a new program that was started by Gretchen Whitmer this year. It's still a little bit unclear. So that's an ongoing, but for right now, we have enrolled students who have said, I want to get my high school diploma and then go on to college. We are working with them, and that's been our reimbursement for that so far, the $2,000. And we had a surprise last year where we got a $500 check from Ford Motor Company. I think just for being awesome, and we took it. So thank you. That's what this is. This is what our adult education financial situation looks like right now. And I have to say, in my 13 years in adult education, it's never looked quite this good. So the finances look good, and we're doing a good job with that. I'm almost done, I promise. Coop, can we go to the next slide? Okay, so I realize it's hard for you to see this, but every month our region does, it's kind of like this competition. Like here we're going to list every adult ed program in all of Region 10. And Region 10 includes Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb counties, so your biggest 3 counties. So every month we get together for a Region 10 meeting, and they give out this sheet. And it lists all the programs, and it lists how many students you have enrolled, and it lists your performance measures. And I realize some of you, it's hard to see. I encourage you to look at this and look at the blue, and look at Romulus, and notice that we have the highest percentage for performance measures of any school in Region 10, and this is the first time that this has happened. And we use this sheet, Moira gets so sick of me bringing it up because it's so important to us that our numbers improve. And I just really wanted to include this and brag again that this is amazing. Our numbers, you can see, and you can see what our numbers have been consistent, and that we're growing. We're not the biggest program in Region 10. And we're not going to be until we expand our staff a little bit more. We are what we can handle. We have the staff to do that. Once we hire more staff, then we'll grow, and we'll become that program. Maybe not quite Dearborn size, but certainly Detroit. But if you could, at some point, look at that blue and see our performance rate for Romulus, highest in the state. And if you look at, highest in the region. I won't overdo myself there, but if you look, we're so far ahead of the average for the region. So I just had to include that, again, as a bragging point, because that's what we're supposed to do here. And then on just the last few slides, Coop, if you wouldn't mind just going through that, for those of you who have not walked through our wing of the high school, I think it's outstanding how first Mr. Cooper started with decorating it, and I use decorate. That is not the language that they would use, but the furniture that we've included in this wing, it's It's a bragging point for us again. So this is, as soon as you walk in, this is what you see, in these leather couches and these beautiful tables right there, that the students can choose to work in this common area if you want. If you go to the next slide, Mr. Cooper, these are two of our classrooms. Most proud of the classroom on the right, because that was a storage unit before Moira and I tackled it. And that was our project last year. We cleaned that entire storage room and we built that wall. That green wall that you see there, behind that green wall is all of our files and all the stuff that we don't want anybody to see, hidden behind a locked door, and we turned that into a fourth classroom. So if you just see like the classrooms, I think they have beautiful new carpet that we've laid, really nice paint, and if you see these desks, this is what I am a big bragger about the desks, but they're whiteboard desks, right on the desk, and then afterwards, like, hey, I want to show my classmate what I did, the desks lift up. And they're like boards that you can roll and move around. So it's just really, really cool classrooms. Mr. Cooper, if you can just show the last two slides really quick. It just shows our other two classrooms. We have 4 total, all with these whiteboards, colorful walls, lots of computers and Chromebooks as far as the eye can see. And then the final slide just shows our awning, another bragging point, right? So this was something that we did last year. We didn't have an awning there, right? So if you're ringing the doorbell, you're getting soaking wet. So we added that, and I just, I'm proud of what we're doing. So, and I realize this is the venue to do that in. We subtitled our presentation at McKay, I get by with a little help from my friends. And I just have to say that the position that I'm standing in, not just with my outstanding staff, because I think I have the best staff, but with my colleagues as well. And again, Mr. Parker, Mr. Pate, Mr. Petty, all of the admin in the district has been really helpful to me as a new admin, and I just, we feel really welcome, we feel really good, and if I could have made this shorter, the state of our school is awesome. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer, but thank you so much for letting us present tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Renee. You're always a joy. Your joy is infectious. Your enthusiasm is genuine, and your commitment to students and staff is unwavering. And so thank you for all of the work that you do, and thank you that when you come to us and speak, that you are speaking about your heart's passion, and it carries over. So I'm not surprised that we're the highest performing in the region. That is wonderful. And I know, Mr. Cooper, kudos to you too, because developing our VLC, you put a lot of work into that. And one of a niche is that we have students that come from all over because we have the in-person centers and the couches and the popcorn. And I mean, it's a place where people can go and no other district offers it. So that's a niche and a big point of pride for our district. And I know Ms. Gowan had talked about even in our, when not everybody knows that we offer the GED or the high school diploma.
Right.
And it's amazing how when people find that out, they are just shocked. And so we need to make sure that that's no longer our best kept secret.
Agreed.
And get that out. And even as we interact in the other building with families and let parents know, hey, if you are looking to earn a GED or a high school diploma, we offer that right here on site.
For free.
For free, yes, and wrap around our families and
Absolutely.
emphasize the importance on education, and thank you for that. Are there any questions from board members?
Kennard, I do have something.
Yes, ma'am.
First of all, I would like to say to you, every time I see you, you bring great enthusiasm.
Well, thank you.
Okay, in what you're speaking and what you're doing and what you like to do for the Romulus Community School District, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
And also, I've often had individuals ask a couple of questions, and you did touch a little bit on it, and that's pertaining to the diploma in terms of what it looks like. But one of the questions is the accreditation to that diploma. Is that diploma, when a high school diploma versus a virtual diploma, will it have the same weight?
Sure.
Would it have the same recognition as they graduate from the district and going out into other ventures like entering into colleges, 4-year accreditations, or with the community college and so forth? So that is a question that has been asked quite often.
It's a great question.
Okay.
And I think that was one of the reasons why we decided to keep these virtual students on the high school track, but coded fully virtual. So when those students, let's say we have a 12th grader who's a virtual student but on the high school track, their diploma will say Romulus High School. So to my knowledge, there's nothing on the diploma like an asterisk or anything. And we get that question in adult ed. Well, it's an adult ed diploma. Well, we always say that adult ed diploma is, you approved that, the Romulus Community School Board, and that comes from Romulus. So that diploma means something for our adult ed students, because I'll tell you, there are programs out there that are selling fake diplomas.
Yeah.
And then these students can't do anything with it. So for us to say that our diploma is signed and backed by the Romulus Community School, we've never had one problem. Our students have been able to do anything and everything that a traditional face-to-face student would be able to do with that diploma. The RVLC diploma is an alternative school. So I think and we explained that to people at our informational meeting, that, you know, alternative schools at times might not get the same recognition that, right? And we use this example, if you're applying to U of M Ann Arbor, we want to be careful to keep you, and that comes down to, we have to have a good educational development plan with the students from the beginning. When a student comes to us like, what do you want to do? What's the plans? And if the plan is, I want to go to Yale and I want to go to Harvard, then we want to keep you on that high school track and make sure your diploma says Romulus High School. If they're telling me, you know, I want to get into the trades, I'd like to do something like that, then having an alternative-based diploma wouldn't matter. They would still be able to do everything that they can do with that. It's funny that you would ask that. We just had this conversation today. It's an ongoing conversation. Yeah. We want to make sure that people know that with that diploma, you can do everything else. And a student could get an alternative diploma or a GED, go to a community college for a few years, and then transfer to Harvard or Yale. You see that kind of stuff, maybe not Harvard or Yale, but we see this a lot. So I think that's a very valid question, and one that we talk about often.
It's often spoken. I think the more we talk about it, we will diminish the myths.
Absolutely.
You know,
and same thing with GED.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right, and then I have another question. You mentioned the student to teacher ratio. I know you said we had 90 students in the.
Ooh.
So, and I know that the classroom size in classroom versus virtual is much different.
Sure.
And I've talked to a lot of administrators and educators across Michigan. You know, we all have the same type of, question. What should that look like? So what is the ratio in terms of what we're trying to accomplish to student to teacher, and what is the ratio currently
50
with
to
what
1.
you have?
What we would like to get, it's right now, we're at 45 to 1. Once Ms. Bell starts on the 22nd, we will be at 45 to 1. I had a meeting with Margaret earlier in the school year about this very thing. You asked very poignant questions. The student to teacher ratio is huge. And we knew we couldn't grow anymore unless we brought on more staff. So with the new staff, we've gotten the ratio down to about 45 to 1, and I think we can't go any higher than that, and here's why. It's a little bit different, and the teachers now have a student who's in 5 classes. So we have to consider that ratio a little bit different. So while one teacher does have 45 students, those 45 students each have 5 or 6 classes. So it's not that teacher is looking at just the English or just the science. They're looking at all of those classes. So, we took those things into consideration when we talked about the ratio. Clearly, we cannot have a ratio that's 100 to 1. And talking to other alternative schools in the district through our leadership network, you're seeing more along the lines of 30 to 50. I've not heard more than 50, and I talk a lot. I'm sorry, but please forgive me. But from whom I've talked to, I've not heard anyone say more than 50. So I think us keeping it at around 45 is I feel good about that.
Okay. And you did state that we have the highest in the region with our adult education. I'm a strategist, and I like to see it get to be the state.
Absolutely.
Okay, so in some way, fashion, or form, is there a preliminary, or if you have thought of a strategic plan that at some point that you can have conversations with your administrator and seeing where we are here now, but we want to get here.
I wish
how do we get there?
It almost seems like I fed these questions to you because I'm
No, you
very.
didn't. We have never spoken.
I know this is because I get to brag about something else now. We actually have started strategic planning in adult ed just this year. We have someone who's working with us specifically on that. We've had 2 already, and we address that very thing. We look at those performance measures. What can we do? and we strategize, and it's exciting, and we've never done this in adult ed before. And so I'll calm down because I get too excited about adult ed, but it's exciting. We've never done strategic planning. We do it once a month, and we're doing that exact thing. So I'm very proud to tell you, yes, we are working on this, and I will work to become the best in the state because I am very competitive.
Okay, we appreciate those matrices being presented to us at some point.
Absolutely, absolutely. I will
thank you.
keep the board posted. Thank you
All right.
so much.
Any other questions from board members?
Thank you so
Ms.
much.
Gowan, thank you.
I appreciate
Thank
the
you.
time.
And I do want to add this, it's not just the students and the ratio, but I've watched over the years, and this goes back to when Mr. Cooper was there and Todd was there and you, and as the staff grows, there is this whole environment and atmosphere. It's not just a teacher to student ratio. All of the adults, you guys are all genuinely invested.
Absolutely.
And invested, and there's real relationships that go on. And it's hard for me to choose my favorite RCS event, but be hard pressed to find something better than our adult ed graduation. I mean, the stories, the resilience, the what the education and opportunity means to our students,
Yeah.
and then to watch the staff, it's like they're watching their own children.
It's
And
amazing.
it's an amazing thing, and thank you.
Thank you so much. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. I just have to add, right before I came here, I got to call a 23-year-old who completed his high school requirements in under 6 months and tell him how impressed I was with him, and we got a little teary-eyed together. So this is the beauty of adult ed. Thank you
Yeah.
for allowing us to offer this program in this district. We very much appreciate it. You'll be
Thank
hearing
you.
from me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, under the report of the interim superintendent, Mr. McNatt is not joining us tonight. Board members, for the FYI district updates, he will email those. The first item under the report of the superintendent is an action item for the hire of an interim director of human resources. The candidate is Dan Scott. Is there a motion? If so, we will open the floor for discussion.
Move that the Board of Education approve an interim Human Resources Director contract with Dan Scott at a rate of $500 a day beginning November 9th, 2021, and ending when the Director of Human Resource position is filled. Rationale, Dan Scott will perform the duties of Interim Director of Human Resources. Please see the contract for details pursuant to Board of Education Policy 4001. Interim Superintendent will forward a contract after board approval of this item. Budget implications is general fund.
Moved by Piles.
No.
I'm sorry, moved by Evans. Is there support?
Support, Kennard.
Supported by Kennard. We do not have a contract in our packet tonight. The rate, the daily rate, is the only expense. There are no benefits or other costs associated with this contract, and it is interim, on an interim basis. And it will be reviewed by legal. But Ms. Terrell, since you had a question, I'll yield the floor to you first.
I know that I spoke with interim superintendent, and he advised some items that would be included with the position, and that's why I want to see a contract. I don't understand why this board has voted not to move forward with a contract, and we have a contract in front of us, and now we don't have a contract. So I'm not understanding why it's not being presented to us now so that we can see the different items. Like I said, I had an hour-long conversation with him, and there were certain items that he said would be in it, and yet we don't have it.
Such as, are you talking about duties or?
Duties, terms, as to how long he will be here. It wasn't a wide general statement like until we have a hire. That is not what we talked about. So again, I just think that it's relevant when we're hiring to review a contract. And then I have a question even with the pay rate. This says we generally don't pay at $500 a day. So I just, I want to know what goes into that. How did we come to that?
Madam President,
Yes, Ms. Kennard.
it has always been a practice that when these types of informations come before the board, that we have substantial support with it, okay? And in order for us to make a concise decision on this, we need to have the information that supports this recommendation of a motion. And that's with anything that comes before us. We've gotten away from our practices where when we have action items, the board members should have these documents for us to review prior to the meeting. I'm not saying that we should not vote or approve. I'm just saying moving forward, and even today for us to do this, I'm not ready to make a decision because I don't have the information for me in terms of what the contract says. And when that contract is before us and all board members, then we can make a concise determination as to terms if we should accept this or not. And I think moving forward that we need to get back into our practice, that anything that comes before us that's on an action, that we have the documentation with it so that it's part of the board packet. And it should be handed to us, delivered to us in a timely fashion, not the day of the meeting.
Yep.
Okay, we need to get back to this. We've gotten away from it, and I am suggesting that we do that.
I know that there was a contract written up for the first candidate, who is not the same candidate. Ms. Terrell, did you review that contract and suggest changes to that, just so that we can make sure that we are getting all of the items covered? Ms. Terrell?
I'm sorry?
Yes. So we had a recommendation for a candidate at our previous meeting. Did you review that contract and ask for changes from that?
Apologize, I thought you were still speaking. I asked specifically this past week, I believe it was Thursday or Friday, and I was told that there would be language in the contract as to how long the individual would be there. And to say that we had one, it's not here. We're voting today. So I don't believe that it's acceptable to say we're going to vote, a contract will be provided after we vote. How is that acceptable?
Right. So, and that's what I'm asking. The contract for the candidate was a standard HR contract. Did you review that and have changes to that?
I did not.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
I did not.
I want to make sure that we are covering.
Madam President,
Yes.
whether we had the contract 2 weeks ago or whatever is being brought back to us today, whatever we are looking at before us in terms of the action should be part of the packet.
Correct.
So I'm assuming, now correct me if I'm wrong, the individual that was brought before us is no longer being recommended, correct? So there's no need for us to have a conversation about whether we are going to be voting on that or not. Is that where you're going?
No, what I was asking was that was a interim contract. So I was just wondering if Ms. Terrell wanted changes specifically to that, because I want to make sure when we bring a contract, we have addressed all of those items if there were specific changes to be made, so that we don't get here and then need to revise it. That's why I was asking.
Okay, so that's why we should
So,
have
yes.
it before we come before the
Okay.
board, so that we can have those type of general questions asked
Right.
with the superintendent, interim superintendent, so that we're not having this type of discussion at the board.
Ms. Gutzman, do you have any information on the contract? I'm sorry to put you on the spot. I just didn't know if you were privy to any information regarding the contract.
For this candidate, I do not, other than Mr. McNatt told me today that if the board approved the contract today, that he would go through legal, get everything situated there, and then send it out to the board.
Okay,
I do not have any.
so we don't have a contract, okay.
Madam
President.
Yes. Ms. Wester?
Referring back to your question to trustee Terrell, and to piggyback off of our vice president here, the information in the last person's contract gave us detailed information as to how long that person was going to be here. It set forth straight guidelines in there, where we don't have that here
Right.
to look at. And to vote for something, to approve it, and then take the contract to legal afterwards.
Oh, right, yeah,
Defeats
no.
defeats the
Right,
purpose.
no,
Yeah.
but, and we've established that. I was just wondering if when the contract's written, I didn't want it to come back like the first one, if there were specific issues that Ms. Terrell raised. I want to make sure that those get forwarded to Mr.
I guess-
McNutt. But yes,
Yeah, like Ms. Kennard was saying.
right,
We have to look at each
We need the
contract
contract, yep.
totally different, even if it's a standard contract.
yep,
Some wording can be changed.
absolutely,
A different amount can be put in there. So each contract technically,
Yes.
be it this one or one moving forward, even if it's for the same position, we always come back
Sure.
and look at it.
Mhm.
So thank you.
Are there any other questions from board members? Seeing none, there is a motion to approve this, so Madam Secretary, if you'd call the roll.
Terrell,
No.
Kennard,
No.
Piles,
No.
Wester,
No.
German,
No.
Evetts, no.
Motion fails. Next on the agenda is next on the agenda is an action item to hire an interim director of instruction, Mr. Nelson Henry, and then move Ms. Marino into the interim principal position at Romulus Middle School. I will read the motion and move that the Board of Education approve the following interim appointments. Nelson Henry to serve as interim executive director of instruction at a rate of $115,000 per year, beginning,
113.
no, it's actually 115.
It reads 113 though.
I know, that's why it was rewritten, because the salary on that position was raised last November to 115. It was raised since, but we're still on that step. At a rate of 115 per year, which is step one for that position, beginning November 9th, 2021, and ending when the executive director position is filled, and for Floretta McNeil Marino to serve as interim principal of Romulus Middle School at a rate of $109,037 per the RASA contract, beginning November 9th, 2021, and ending when the principal position is filled. The rationale is that Nelson Henry will perform the duties of interim executive director of instruction, and Floretta McNeil Marino will perform interim principal duties at Romulus Middle School pursuant to Board of Education Policy 4001. The budget implications are general fund and covered under the RASA contract for Ms. Marino. Is there support?
Support, Kennard.
The floor is open for discussion.
Madam President,
Yes.
this is another one, just as stated by trustee Terrell, where we need a contract. Just like now, we're reading that the dollar amounts are different, and I understand that we need a contract. No offense, nothing against Mr. Henry or Ms. Marino. We still need a contract that's going to lay out the terms and dollars amount for these positions.
Ms. Evetts?
And also the duties that will be assigned to each individual. And who's going to take over the position of assistant principal at the middle school?
At this time, there is not a recommendation for that.
Okay, but that leaves Ms. Marino on her own,
Correct.
which is a concern, I believe. It's a concern of mine.
So I will, the interim, the director of instruction, um, the duties are the same as what they were with Dr. Laws. This is because our administrators were suffering without that instructional leader. If there are specifics that the board would like to see in contracts, please forward those so that when we come back, if we need to come back and vote on this, that everything is covered. And maybe this should be broken down into two separate motions as well.
Madam President,
Yes, Ms. Kennard.
it's not anything specific that we are looking for. We just want the support documentation with
Okay.
all action items.
Right.
We did this. We've always done this. This is nothing new.
Right.
It's nothing against the action, okay? We just want the documentation with it so we can review it and that
Yep.
we know what we are voting on,
Absolutely.
okay? So maybe we should, we can probably table and come back, maybe have another meeting where we have all this information for all of these action items
Right.
that requires, appointment, and we should do it. I know we have some things we're doing this week, but if we as board members, if we can get that information, I'm quite sure we can make it work, where we can vote on this
Okay.
week.
So there's a motion on the floor right now.
Yes.
So we will vote on that. And then, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Wester? No. German?
No.
Evetts, no. Terrell?
No.
Kennard?
No,
Piles?
No. Motion fails. Next, we have an action item. It is for the job posting of accountant. If there is a motion,
Madam President, recommended motion, move that the Board of Education approve the posting of the district accountant vacancy. Rationale, the presented job posting vacant announcement is submitted for board consideration. We are seeking board approval to post this position. This position became vacant upon the departure of Mr. Stephen Baker. There is no change in duties for this position, and the salary range is as noted, 55 to 64.5. The budget implications is the general fund. In the board package, we have exhibits, job posting, vacant announcement, the accountant at Romulus Board of Education office.
moved by Kennard, is there support?
Support.
Supported by Wester. The floor is open for discussion. Ms. Terrell?
Madam President, I just had one question, and I'm noticing that the majority of these options indicate coming from the general fund. And at times that we've had presentations brought before us, we've been advised that there are other dollars to access in order to pay for these different positions. How did we make the determination for the general fund?
I'm sorry.
How was the determination made to pull it from the general fund?
That is the source of funding for the salaries for this position. It's the general fund, and we're not using ESSER funds for any of our, for any of these salaries.
I can add to that. Let me address that. In the budget, it's set up where you have general fund dollars, and then you have programs, and then you have account coding. And in the budget, you have salaries, you have non-general fund, you have operating. So when this position becomes vacant, that budget line for that position is closed, okay? So A means that is applicable, someone is in that position. O means that it's open. So until someone is placed in that budget line stays there, okay? And there's any increases to that, any merit increases on that budget, it is increased by budget, but that's what we go through the budget and increase. So therefore, the budget line for this particular position doesn't go away because the person goes away. It's embedded in the budget and it's still there.
And I do want to also note that the posting, the job description, the posting was updated by Mr. Sovey and Dr. Edmondson back in March. So this is a new, improved job posting for RCS for accountant. And the other thing that I want to note is that this is only to post so that we can start accepting applications. This is not a motion to hire anyone or move beyond that right now. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, is moved by Kennard, supported by Wester. Madam Secretary, will you call the vote?
Evetts, yes. Kennard,
Yes.
Wester,
Yes.
Terrell,
Yes.
German,
Yes.
Piles,
Yes. Motion carries. Next, we have an action item for the job posting of the Executive Director of Early Childhood through 12 instruction position. Is there a motion?
Madam President, recommended motion. Move that the Board of Education approve the posting of the Executive Director of Early Childhood 12 instruction vacancy. The rationale, the presented job posting vacancy announcement is submitted for board consideration. We are seeking board approval to post this position. This position became vacant upon Dr. Sophie Lafayette-Loss' departure. The only change in duties is we have added the duty of grants. Compensation for this position is $113 to $124,500. The budget implications is general fund. Exhibits, board members, in your board packet, you have the vacant announcement, you have the Executive Director Childhood 12 instruction information.
Yeah, Madam President?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. As I look at this, it's saying it's Dr. Sophia Lafayette-Loss.
Did
and this
you
is
want to
for the early
support
childhood.
so we can discuss?
Oh, yeah, support.
Supported by German. I would, Ms. German, before I turn the floor back over, Ms. Kennard, that 113 is a typo. It's 115.
Okay, it should be 115.
It's 115, Dr. Edmondson, that was a position salary increase last fall.
Okay, to 124,500.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Madam President, is this position for the curriculum instruction, or is it for the Executive Director of Early Childhood? Is that Dr.
It's
Love's
curriculum. It's just called
Oh.
the early childhood through 12, yes. I know. I get confused with that as well. Are there any questions or comments from board members regarding posting this position? Again, the salary range is consistent with the salary increase last fall to 115, and the range is based on the step schedule that Jeffrey Ramberg presented that is aligned with districts around this area.
President,
Yes, Mr. Rowe.
It's, so it's indicating that we're adding the additional duties of grants.
Mhm.
Is that a recommendation of the Ramberg report as well?
I'm sorry, I can't.
Why was that added to this position?
So the grants have always been done by the curriculum director because so much of student programming is dependent on the grants, gen ed, not just special ed. So our curriculum director has always done curriculum and grants. So it was just this past hire that was taken out, but that's why we've had such a burden on the district of not having somebody to do that. So when we reposted, grants were brought back in, which is typical in districts that the curriculum director also does grants.
Do we know why it was taken out? Why was it taken out? And then, so we know that there's always an opportunity to improve and enhance. And I guess my question is, it was removed for a reason and added on to I think we've had different individuals completing that task. Why are we adding it back on, additional responsibility
Okay,
to that particular
I
position?
understand better now. So it wasn't removed. In the previous posting, it said experience with grants preferred. And so we learned that when we did get a curriculum director who was phenomenal, but without having that grant ability also, the weight on the district it became too much, and it became evident that we needed to go back and have that grant. And that is also aligned with Ramberg's report and what other districts, their central office structures.
So, I think I'm understanding. Okay, we're adding on an additional job, correct? Another,
Task.
another task. And we're bringing it back because we did not have it when Dr. Laws was here.
Right.
So, and I'm looking at the salary. So we're gonna keep the salary the same with an additional task?
So,
Are we gonna?
So we had, the Director of Curriculum and Grants was making $101,000 in March of 2020. And then when the position was posted in the fall of 2020, the salary was increased to $115,000, and it stipulated knowledge of grants preferred. But then essentially what we did is we got a phenomenal curriculum director and hired in at $115,000, but we have paid, I don't know, upwards of $150,000 for the grant component. So it is, that's why this is being written into the job posting.
And also, I would like to add to this, that's why you have a salary range, because in job descriptions and postings, so that it'll allow for that additional responsibilities at a salaried. Okay, there's a difference between salary employees and it's a difference between non-salary. Some of those responsibilities at a salary level requires. That's why in the job descriptions it says preferred, or you're specifically saying that that is an independent job focus. Okay, so it falls in between, it falls into those categories. It's just what is the administration looking for? And so if administration is presenting this to us, and administration has, they know what they're looking for when they're doing the interviewing and looking at that range.
I'm sorry. The point that I'm trying to make, one of the points that I'd like to make is, I do remember Dr. Laws talking about being overwhelmed with the work. And if we have someone in the position of handling grants only, it allows that individual to be able to focus in on bringing the money in. And we've had great success with the individuals that were hired just to do the grant curriculum itself. So I understand the salary component and more responsibility, but with it being a position that is designed to bring in addition, I think to have knowledge so that they can be interwoven is important, but to add that function in the additional responsibility, eliminating the grant position altogether, that was, I think Marie Miller had a big piece of that, eliminating that position. And I do even remember when, oh my goodness, her name was just on the top of Corinza. She often talked about how difficult it was to manage all of those components. And that may have been one of the reasons that it was moved out like that. So to put it back in, and even though you've added a cushion to add an additional increase in money, the responsibility on one individual, when you're working and being pulled in all the different areas that you are, it diminishes the capability of being able to accomplish something at a greater level. And so I would say it being added back in because it's been the practice of the past, even when we've talked with I've had conversation with Corinza, had conversation with Dr. Laws, and the job in itself carries a heavy load. So I would ask if we could consider that rather than just adding it in because it has been part of the past practice.
So, yes, and we should never just do something just because we always have. But I know Corinza, even when Corinza left and went to another district, she was still doing curriculum and grants because that person also has to be very, very intimately involved with the building principals and how those funds are used. And so all of that ties into the curriculum. That's why that knowledge is necessary. And as far as writing grants, we're not writing any new grants. These are the grants that we already get. And to my knowledge, I mean, if we can post and see what we get. If we get someone who can do both, then nothing lost. If we don't, then that might be something we need to revisit. But we've spent $150,000 extra just to write the grants that we already receive. And benchmarking against other districts, no other district has that. I'm sorry, Ms. Kennard.
Yes, I just have one thing, and I'm just gonna, for my own clarification, it will appear to me that a person at this level is more of the administrator, lead person who has more of the expertise in making decisions versus a person who writes the grants, research the grants, and submit. So in that type of scenario, the executive director of curriculum would be the lead administrator in managing that. And I'm not sure if in the previous, it would seem to me that moving down the road that if we have this type of situation going on, that perhaps we may need to have more of a non-exempt employee, okay, reporting to that. So I'm looking at the bigger picture. I'm looking at the bigger picture when I'm looking at this, when I'm looking at what's presented before us, because it came to us from administration. Okay, I'm looking at it in terms of the facts and that this is what they need, with the implication, with what they know what they may need once they're in the position. Because it seems like to me, in looking at this, there is going to be some support to that.
Absolutely.
Okay, and that's just what I'm envisioning and what I'm seeing in front of me. Okay.
Ms. German, did you have anything in this? I just want to make sure that, okay. Mr. Garland.
I might be able to help you understand where the change was made. When our former curriculum director, that's what they were. They were a curriculum director. We hired Ms. Laws, Dr. Laws, to be an executive director, second in charge of the entire district. Her duties were compounded in doing that. And so that's the reason why this position is now different than it was before. And I can tell you from experience that Corinza did a fantastic job, but it was overwhelming. And Dr. Laws, the same thing. So I would just, add some historical context to it, really ask you to consider, because as we know, our former grants helper, she was involved all along since 13. So she's always been here. So either we look at this as a curriculum director or an executive director of curriculum, second in charge of the district. There were so many things that was involved in that position, and I just wanted to give you that as you make your decision.
Recently, if you know that I've been the one handling the grants, and I can tell you right now, it is a tremendous amount of work. It is not just, oh, it's a grant from the state, and there you go, let me click a few buttons, or anything like that. It's not. The grants are becoming, even the state and federal grants are becoming more of a competitive style grant with it. Tracking how it is spent is an enormous amount of my time right now, and following that along. And I've said this before, and I haven't said it from the meeting, but just because someone did it before, they didn't do it well, okay? Just because that's how it was before, doesn't mean it was done well, because one of the things that has been done recently with Dr. Laws and Ms. Miller was cleaning up those grants to find money that we were missing or we didn't spend and had to give back. That's an aspect we got to take into consideration right there too. I hope that you can take into consideration with that, because again, someone that is as exceptional with grants might not be that numbers person that needs to be able to handle grants too. That's actually few and far between, and we were very, very lucky to have a Dr. Laws for the time that we did. Okay, so I want you to, hopefully you can think about is where do we need, this person, where do we want them to concentrate in? If we want them to concentrate in curriculum and we need some curriculum help, with all of that's, to add on that grant fee is going to potentially push some people away from that position.
Mr. Cooper,
Mr. Cooper.
Yes.
may I ask you a question?
Sure.
Who's providing you with support to the grant?
Pretty much nobody right now.
Okay, that goes back to my statement earlier.
So
We may need to, as a board, and we can put this on our agenda when we have our retreat and sit down and look at the overall structure of the central office in terms of the type of support and need. We're functioning with the titles of yesterday.
Yep.
Okay? And from listening to Mr. Bill and to Mr. Cooper and knowing what we have in front of us, that's an indication, if I'm looking at it strategically and I'm looking at down the road, then we may need to look at some of those things in terms of what we have as administrators and executive management. Because it's clear to me, okay, that you need additional support. You should have some support in terms of what you're doing. You should be making the decisions while that person's actually doing the research and the calculations and making sure that the grant deadline is approaching and managing it monthly, because grants should be managed monthly in terms of the expenditures against the budget and making sure that the year end, okay, that you're doing the ratios that you're reaching and you're expending the budget on the grant, because those fundings can be returned or you lose them. So you need to have someone to manage that.
Think about too, and I'm not saying there are more Marie Millers popping up because the people around the state are finding about how important a position like that is. Having my experience with her now in the short time that I got to experience with her, it was her knowledge of when deadlines are met, because the state doesn't always push that out there. They don't always publish a to-do list of everything that needs to get done, for them, knowing the proper wording to get everything approval, and then her knowledge and experience at the state level of anyone in that kind of position of knowing who to contact if you've got questions. Where I literally was in a meeting in the boardroom with her, and a phone call, we had a question answered, with that, to be able to have that time, in the evening to be able to do something like that. So it is very, very, I want to stress this again, it is very time consuming.
Yes, it is. I believe.
So, and we need that person to be able to concentrate on curriculum right now, more than that, or we got to get the support for it. So that's, I ask you, and please.
Thank you.
Ms. Lester?
Here, you want this one?
Just takes a second for it to turn on.
Madam President, just to piggyback off of everything that was said, that grants position, like I said, it's time consuming. Everyone knows I do Little League, so I research and do some grants for that as well, for football. So if we're gonna have our executive director of curriculum, as Vice President Kennard said, she would be that overseer for that position. So I'm asking that we pull that additional job duty out of there and possibly make it, a part-time position or bringing in another support person to be able to do that. Because that in itself, doing the research, making sure, like Coop said, getting those deadlines down, if you don't have them, we're gonna miss out on a lot. So I would like to have that pulled out and create a new position, part-time, for that.
So, there is in the qualifications and knowledge of the grants. You're saying strike the language where they are directly responsible for it. So what we will have to do is, again,
It wouldn't be striking it out. Yes, they would have to have knowledge so that they know what they're overseeing
right,
as well, but not to really make that a job duty
right.
per se for him or her to have to do that on top of creating our curriculum and making sure that our teachers have the tools that they need to teach the curriculum.
Usually in that, you'll say that that person has the responsibility of overseeing the day-to-day operation of a person who is responsible for grants. So just the language needs to be changed. It's just stay in. I believe what we have here is accurate, but there needs to be a language in there that says that person's not actually doing the day-to-day, but is responsible for the oversee
Right.
of.
So I'm looking for that, and I don't see the language where it says they're doing it. It does say that the knowledge of the grants and programs is preferred.
Just say the knowledge of and the oversee and the responsibility to overseeing the
Okay, so
responsibility.
it's the last page. The responsible for the development and implementation of federal and state aid programs, including but not limited to.
Yes, and that would allow them to have, once they are in the position, whenever we do the hiring, it would allow them to have that opportunity to identify who that person would be, with the superintendent, interim superintendent, in terms of filling that position or creating that, whichever way. So that'll give the administration the opportunity to do their due diligence and bring it back to the board whenever that is. You want to bring someone in to have the opportunity to recognize or to interview and find their staff.
Right.
Let them have that.
So that would require the board, we would have to revisit whether that is a part-time, what that support looks like, and you're saying defer that so that the new executive director has a say in hiring that person. So the posting, so under them, they're still responsible for that, but they would have a support person.
So you want it to read responsible for the oversight
Yes,
of the development?
yep. Are there, is the board agreeable to that language change? Responsible for the oversight,
Yes.
and then we will have to, keep in mind that we will need to discuss the creation of a support position.
Right.
And also that's a general fund position. So, there is a motion on the floor. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, will you call the roll?
Terrell?
So there's a motion on the floor. Has it been amended? Are we amending
So, it's oversight is that language.
it? Yes.
Your vote is yes?
On the last, did you see it on the last page, the first bullet?
So what's your vote, Terrell?
Yes.
Thank you. German?
Yes.
Evans, yes. Kennard?
Yes.
Piles?
Yes.
Wester? Thank you.
Okay. Motion carries. Next, we have the job posting, we have the job posting for the Director of Human Resources. Is there a motion?
Madam President, recommended motion, move that the Board of Education approve the posting of the Director of Human Resources vacancy. The rationale, the presented job posting vacancy announcement is submitted for board consideration. We are seeking board approval to post this position. This position became vacant upon Margaret Hatzler's departure. There is no change in duties for this position. The compensation range is $99,000 to $109,000. The budget implications is in the general fund, and the board has the exhibits before them, which is the job posting, the vacancy announcement of the Director of Human Resources.
Moved by Kennard. Is there support?
Support.
Support by German. Floor is open. Any questions? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, will you please call the vote?
Wester,
Yes.
German,
Yes.
Terrell. Kennard,
Yes.
Piles,
Yes.
Evans, yes.
Motion carries. Next, we have an action item for extra duty stipend for grants. Mr. Cooper, is there a motion?
Madam President, recommend motion. Move that the Board of Education approve a stipend to David Cooper at the rate of $3,750 per quarter for additional duties of grants work until the position is filled. The rationale, Mr. Cooper, has taken on duties of grants work for the district. Board approval of the stipend for this work is being requested. The budget implications is from the ESSER 2, and there are no exhibits.
Moved by
Support.
Kennard, supported by Wester. To the board, I forwarded an email to you that I received, I just found from another employee who has taken on extra duties. So I just don't know, we need to be mindful of if you're able to check that email. I do not want to get into any situation where we could have a Title IX violation.
Okay. Was this ever brought to us?
No, it was not, no, and that's the issue, that it was
I kind of,
made aware of, but not placed on the agenda. So, and when I read that email, I just want the board to be aware.
Could you explain what the Title IX implications
So what it
may
is,
be?
and Mr. Garrick, maybe you can advise. So we have a motion to pay a stipend to Mr. Cooper because he's been doing extra grants work. That is not part of his job duty. We also have an employee who is the Director of Special Services who has also been doing extra duties outside of her job classification and working over. And it made me aware of it when I was at central office one day. And so I, told her log her hours and what she's doing and talked to Mr. McNatt. So after seeing the agenda, we received an email, Mr. McNatt and I, that they noticed that there's an action item for one employee to receive an extra duty stipend, but she was not placed on the agenda. So I want to make sure because that we're not getting into any Title IX or any kind of a gender discrimination by putting one employee on and not another.
And it really, is this going through?
No. I don't know how to.
Is it going through now? Okay, yeah. Really, obviously, during this COVID pandemic that we're in, many people are performing many additional duties that they didn't perform before. and whether or not an individual should be given additional comp is something that needs to be reviewed by the administration, and many times it's certainly appropriate. So the fact that Mr. Cooper is getting it doesn't mean that other people should or other people should not. It really, every case needs to be reviewed on its own merits. And I've not spoken to Mr. McNatt about this. I have no knowledge about this. So there is somewhat of a slippery slope. Every time you pay people for doing something extra, particularly in the times we're in, you can have other people coming out and saying, hey, but I've been doing a lot extra. And that's certainly true of everybody in public education. But that doesn't mean that in cases where people have gone extraordinarily beyond what their normal job is, and it sounds like IT versus grant, those are two different areas. It may well be warranted, and I wouldn't stand in the way of additional compensation.
And that was my question, is that they're not coming together. But I will say that this has been coming down the pike for a while, because the grant duties have been there for some time. Ms. Wester.
Okay. So we just received this, so I guess if I was on the opposite end, I would be feeling the same way. And I know, as the attorney spoke, that everyone's taking on extra job duties, but when we look and we see that this person was doing HR responsibilities as well as Coop is doing our grant responsibilities, those are two key things that we use as central office. I'm just wondering why it was never brought to the board. Why it was never ever presented, because looking, I would think I would be feeling some type of way as well as to, when this was presented, when it was talked about to Mr. Manette, and what the answer was for it to be going down the way it's going down.
Right. And again, I think it's timing too, because I know that Mr. Cooper has, and that's why I just want the board to be aware of this, because I know Mr. Cooper was working on grants even when Ms. Hazlett was still here. So this has been an extra duty, and so we're not saying that somebody else is not getting a stipend. I just want the board to be aware that we have another employee, and make sure that legally the timing of these is okay.
I think we need to make sure that other employee is taken care of.
Madam President, that's my point. If she has been doing extra work and it's here right in front of our face, we need to take care of her.
As well.
So we do not have a motion or an amount or duties.
Madam President.
Yes, Ms. Kennard. So I just want the board to be aware that that is something that is out there.
It's not something that I understand that, and I really appreciate how you're approaching this, but she has brought this to our attention. We have the opportunity to address it now. It's not something that we need to dilly-dally about or think about a little bit further. She's deserving of it, and it should have been right along with Mr. Cooper. It should have been presented, but that's neither here nor there. Let's address it now. Let's add it to the agenda, and there's an action item.
Okay, Ms. Kennard.
Madam President, again, that information is not in our packet. The issue at hand is what's before us. I'm not saying that the person deserves or not deserves. I think that's a situation, conversation, and discussion that person needs to have with administration, and then it comes before the board. I think at this moment, and once the administration has that conversation with, you want to stay in your lane, so we're going to stay in our lane, and that is that the administration needs to have the conversation with this employee and bring it to the board, just as this was brought to the board. We want to stay consistent.
Okay.
And then I'm saying that I do believe in, compensating individuals for the work they do. Let there be no mistake. All right, Mr. Cooper has been a diligent employee from the first day I've met him. Okay, and I'm not saying that he's not deserving of this, and he most certainly is, and so he should be compensated if the administration is saying and bringing this before us.
Yes.
So I'm saying that the email that you received, we should address it when it comes before the board.
Right.
And that'll be protocol, that'll be in line with what we are as board. We gotta look at the bigger picture now. The bigger picture is let administration make those decisions and have those conversations, and they bring it before the board in our packet.
Right,
Madam
so
President?
just 1 minute, so in the motion on the floor is for this stipend. So my point of information was just, I wanted to make sure because, there's a male and female in appearances that the board is aware that this is another employee. So it is not part of this motion, nor should it be. So we need to vote on this motion, and then if there is another work that needs to be done, we will. But Ms. Terrell, do you have anything about the stipend for Mr. Cooper?
Well, no, I have another, since you brought it up, I'm looking at this email that was sent out by Interim Superintendent on October 22nd. This individual is mentioned in this email to be considered. There's not a dollar amount attached to it, but stipends is highlighted in yellow.
Right.
So it has been brought to our attention. And again, to keep us consistent, I'm not really sure why she was overlooked, but it's clear, it's here, it's in the email. And she's named as an individual that is doing extra work, and that we should consider it. So I'm all for moving forward with this motion, but also adding.
Well, since we don't actually have the recommendation of the amount, and we do need to bring back those other contracts, we can request that the approval for that employee stipend be brought to us at that time with the amount. Currently, there is a motion on the floor for this stipend of $3,750 per quarter for Mr. Cooper for additional duties of grants. It was moved by Kennard, and I'm sorry, was it supported by Wester? So, Madam Secretary, will you please call the vote on this motion?
Kennard.
I have one more question. I know the motion is on the floor, but this is retroactive, correct?
It does not say when it,
Okay, yes.
so it's per quarter,
So this
Correct.
quarter just.
so the
being
current
the-
quarter. And going forward, I don't know, I guess that we don't have that information.
Right, because that was it says per quarter. We're in the second quarter now, so will we go back to, we need to have this redone with a date?
So, okay. We need to make sure we get this language right. So
Right.
since it will be retro to whenever that is, let's vote on the motion that is on the floor. And if there is language or information missing that board members are not comfortable with, then vote accordingly. Because right now, we don't have a date.
Right, so can I do a superseding motion to remove this to the next meeting till we
Yes.
get
Well,
clarification?
that's what we would do.
Yeah, so
If this doesn't pass, it would be like the other ones, and then we're bringing all these back together in a special meeting.
So we're gonna do a vote anyway, instead of just doing a superseding motion to remove it?
Well, we can, I mean,
Right.
either way, I mean, we did it that way, that's fine. Make a superseding motion to table.
The board needs to know at the time frame what you're voting on. You
Right.
need to know whether it's retroactive or not, from
Right.
what date, if you're gonna vote.
So that's, yes, so go ahead.
Right, I'm making a superseding motion to remove this action item from the agenda and have it placed on the next board meeting.
Yes,
Support, Kennard.
okay, so it is moved by Wester, supported by Kennard. All in favor? Say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Next, we have educational stipend for central office administrative assistants. Is there a motion?
Madam President, recommended motion. Move that the Board of Education restore educational degree stipends that were taken away after the start of the year for non-bargaining central office administrative assistant secretaries as follows. Effective immediately with retroactive pay beginning July 1, 2021. $500 for associate's degree, $1,500 for a bachelor's degree, $2,500 for a master's degree. The eligible employee meet with Interim Superintendent Sean McKnight individually and request monies be incorporated to their salaries. The rationale, a board member requested that this be placed on this agenda. This request was made at our October 25th meeting. This item was previously included on the September 27th agenda. This item is being recommended by Interim Superintendent Sean McKnight. The education degree stipend is a learning initiative. These employees support the district stipends, attract and retain talent, increase employee engagement, boost employee happiness. Lastly, we are in the business of education. An educational degree stipend promotes education. Budget implications is general fund and no exhibits in front of us.
Support.
Moved by Kennard, supported by Wester. Floor is open. Any questions, comments?
Well, the only comment I have is that any job posting that I do, it says in the job description, the qualifications says bachelor's degree, master's degree, and the salary is compensated with the job posting. So I'm not clear on every year that the individuals will be getting compensated for having a degree. Professional development is part of the workforce, and I encourage that. And I encourage those types of initiatives. I'm not clear and sure on what's being presented before us is that as these increases yearly, and how is that in the job description if salaries and the salaries have a salary range based on what your years of experience and your educational levels are. And then along with that, you're getting merit increases to compensate the job that you're doing. We accept positions based on the qualifications, requirements, and your educational levels. You know, so this is a concern for me. I'm just speaking of me because it's not clear.
Right.
Okay. Then again, administration. If administration is looking to change these types of parameters, I know it's come before us before, and we voted on it. I don't think we voted on it. It was just in front of us in the contract. We really didn't have a discussion, you know, as a board.
It was an addendum to
Yeah.
a couple of the contracts, and it
Yeah.
would explain how it went. And it also stated that the stipend would be dependent upon the district's finances at that point in time, and it would be granted and given either at Christmas or at the end of the school year.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So those are stipends. And so then again, I have another issue. Are all these exempt or non-exempt employees? Because there's certain legal law for exempt and non in terms of stipends. Hourly people can work overtime. They don't receive stipends. Okay, salary people can get compensated with stipends. They could be court, like as we just brought before us a few minutes ago. I'm assuming that Mr. Cooper is a salaried employee. Okay, so salaried employees are not hourly paid. So there's some things here that it's not clear for me in terms of, you know, what's before me, in terms of how we're determining this.
I used it as a negotiating piece when I was negotiating my secretarial contract in Van Buren when I was a part of the union. It did go by $500 if those secretaries had an associate's degree, because we were using it as we're in the business of educating, and we want our students to go off and to get their degree and become doctors and scientists and take care of us. So that we were using that as, I went to school or this young lady went to school, this is the job they chose, but they should be able to be compensated for that degree that they paid for. It's really letting them know, yes, you can get a merit. We do get our merit raises and things of that nature, but it just shows what they're worth. It's a bonus. So I see it as Mr. Smith went, they have a master's degree or they have a bachelor's degree. We give them a little something because we know what it takes to get that degree. It costs money to get that degree and come in and get a job. There are some times when you can't get a raise because of how the state of the finances are.
And that's where tuition reimbursement comes in. Most organizations compensate their employees with tuition reimbursement. And so, and let me ask you this, so is this a regular basis or is this a one-time? Are we talking about a one-time
So this,
stipend, or is this an ongoing year-to-year added on to whatever the?
well, it would become a part of the annual contracts. So this is new for our district at central office, as far as degrees. I know as part of our bargaining units, our teachers, for example, are eligible for higher rates when they have degrees. So the debate over this became, but the teachers then have their degrees in what they're teaching, and that correlates to high quality instruction in the classrooms. We have never had that at central office with the exception of a doctorate degree in the past.
Madam President,
Yes, Ms. Terrell.
I think this is, for me, it's clear. The language says these employees support the district. It increases employee engagement. It's an incentive. Degrees are not always easy to obtain. And as Mrs. Wester said, it's something that I would consider to be a piece to attract and keep and maintain. And even further, in this language, it indicates it should be retroactive beginning on July 1st of 2021. And more importantly, it says restore. These education degree stipends were given to our employees. They had the impression that they were receiving it. And there's nothing more heartening to expect that your employer is going to provide an incentive and then have it taken away, especially when we're able to give it. And so to me, the language is clear. It's really should not have been something that would have been taken away, and effective immediately with retroactive pay beginning on July 1st. So I don't see it as saying anything about one time, effective immediately. And so I really do support anything that, right now we're in a bad place. We're in a bad place with our staff. We're losing senior staff that have been here, and we want to incentivize.
And Madam President, I just have one other question. What is the dollar amount that we're talking about, and how would this impact our budget?
Well, without knowing how many central office administrative assistants or secretaries have degrees, we know of two, one with a master's and one with an associate's, but the motion reads that it is for all administrative assistants and secretaries. So I wouldn't know.
Once again, we need the information with the action. I'm not against it. I'm just saying that I would like to know how much this will impact our budget. And what is the dollar amount? Yes.
So, and the other thing is that this is talking about a retro, so this would actually be a salary increase instead of a stipend as it was originally presented. So that would be another thing to note.
Also, again, this is what they were getting. It was taken away. This is what they were promised. It was taken away. Please consider that. Please consider that.
Madam President, I'd like to request the new contracts for these employees to see what their base were, and whether it states anything in the new contracts for a stipend.
So would someone like to make a motion to table this until we have that information? Or does the board prefer to vote on the motion on the floor? But this doesn't even say which employees. So
I guess if this is gonna be the norm, and if it's stating any central office administrative assistant or secretary, we could have 4 people now, and then if we hire someone else because someone leaves that wasn't receiving a stipend, it could actually increase. So that dollar amount is one that could be ever changing depending on the staff that are there. I know original contracts had it in there. I know the new contracts that came out in the summer for us to do had removed them. I wanted to get clarity because it does say that now it's going to be incorporated into their salary, whereas before their salary remained their salary, and this was the additional bonus.
it was like
That
that.
one, right.
And it was paid at the last
pay
in December.
Right.
But what it was before is a master's stipend. We had never had the associates or bachelors. And so we would need to have that information and know what we're voting on before us.
Right, that's what I'm saying. We could have what we have on hand now, but I'm saying with us hiring and with job changes and we could wind up hiring a new person that has a master's degree, because one left that had a associate's and went someplace else and replaced it with someone else that has a master's. So now we're up another $2,000. So we can get the figure of what we currently have, but just remember, that's gonna be a moving chess piece.
It should not be a moving chess piece, because those people that are hiring in, this should never come to the table again.
No.
No, it shouldn't. It should be part of a contract. When you hire in, this is your salary. When we were talking to Margaret Hazlett during the summer and the contracts came out, I sat in a meeting and I said, how many stipends are being paid? And she said, 0. 1 hour later, after the meeting, she told us 2 employees were getting $1,000 a month stipend. So where's the reality? Where's the trust? Where is the transparency? This is not telling me this is gonna cost me $10,000. It's not telling me it's gonna cost me $20,000.
I understand what you're saying, Ms. Evans. When I say it's a moving chess piece.
It shouldn't be, though.
I'm saying in terms of hiring new employees. That's what I say in terms of a moving chess piece. We could have this dollar amount, and we have another position that needs to be filled that could raise that dollar amount. I'm saying we could have our base, and we'll know what our base is, and with a new hire or someone leaving and coming in, it could possibly be less, or it could possibly be more. That's all what I meant by a moving chess.
Well, the other question
Mr.
also-
Cooper's stipend was not, it was tabled because we didn't know if his was going to be retroactive. So we didn't know the true dollar amount. This has no dollar amount, other than an individual degree amount.
Well, and the other unknown is, it talks about a degree, but is there a expectation that that degree is in the field that the person is hiring in that position? Or are we just awarding?
So, right, we need more clarity.
I want to make a superseding motion that we table this and get the amounts requested by board members, and it'll come with the other. Yes, let's get a table and come back to us with the others. Right. What's your motion, to table? So we have, no, your previous motion, so that we're consistent in our language, the things that are coming back.
Oh, the previous motion
Yes.
I made was superseding motion.
Right, to
Postpone.
table this.
To table it.
Table is different than postpone.
The previous motion was, I did the superseding motion to remove.
Okay, I want to make a superseding motion that we remove this from tonight and put it on the next agenda.
Support, Kennard.
All in favor? Aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion, did you say
said
opposed?
opposed?
Ms. Wester opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have an action item, an offer to purchase real estate, and one is the Beverly property, Burton Center.
Madam President, could we ask Mr. Garland to speak on this, please?
Sure.
Before the motion, thank you.
I know, right?
Well, good evening again. I don't think this would be in the best interest of the district. Somewhere we have some numbers confused. And so I sent the board the actual figures. And so the first part of this, I think we need to stay on, not handle it. 35408 Beverly. I don't think this meets anywhere near what it was appraised for.
Thank you. For purposes of discussion, I move that the Board of Education approve the presented resolution to sell property owned by the district located at 35408 Beverly Road, Romulus, Michigan, to purchaser Sammy, ALFASIH, for an amount of $170,000. The board authorizes and directs the interim superintendent to execute the purchase agreement. Is there support?
Support, Kennard.
Moved by Pyle, supported by Kennard. The floor is open. Mr. Garland, thank you for that. I know that I requested that we receive the appraisal for this property. If the board looks in your email that was sent today, this property was appraised in 2021 for $250,000. And the original offer that the potential purchaser made was for $220,000, which the board accepted that as an offer. And now for them to drop it by over 20%. Well, yeah.
Yeah, I would say, do we know why they changed it
Well,
after we
the
voted on it?
purchaser is an individual, is my understanding, but he said that his board saw the amount of work that needed to be done, and so they dropped the price, but anyway, we own property, the district owns property that was appraised this calendar year at $250,000. We were offered $220,000, and now they want to offer $170,000, so we decide. Okay, Madam.
Evans, no. German? No. Terrell? Wester? No. Kennard?
No.
Piles?
No. Motion fails. Thank you, Mr. Garland. Yes. Next, we have the resolution to offer to purchase real estate, Haytie Elementary School, if there is a motion.
Madam President, recommended motion, move that the Board of Education approve the presented resolution to sell 9.83 acres of property formerly known as Haytie Elementary School, partial ID 80008,
99002000, owned by the district, to purchaser A2 Equity Holdings LLC for an amount of $305,000. The board authorizes and directs the interim superintendent to execute the purchase agreement. The rationale: this offer comes to us from Attorney Philip Clark, Troon Law. Budget implications: funds paid to the district. Exhibits in our package is the resolution to purchase the property formerly known as the High-Tide Elementary School, and the offer of the purchase real estate purchase amount, which is $305,000, and the partial number again is 80-008-99-002-000.
Moved by Kennard, is there support?
For German.
Supported by German. And this, Mr. Garland sent us the appraisal for this, I think a month or two ago. We have, so yes. This we discussed and voted on. Unless there are new questions, we can move to vote on this. Secretary Abbott?
Wester,
Yes.
Terrell, was that a yes? Terrell votes yes. Kennard,
Yes.
Evans, yes. German? Piles?
Yes. Motion carries. Next, we have a report of the finance consultant, Mr. Mike Dixon. Do you want me to do so?
Okay, good for 1,000 miles. I want to run through this real quick, okay? You can read it up there if you want to, or get it later. This is just our status report update for the couple of weeks since the last board meeting. And one of the things I want to do is a little clarification from the last board meeting when we started talking a little bit about identifying people and things of that nature. And I kind of approach things from a twofold basis with clients, okay? First of all, I want to identify what point A is, where you are, where the district is now, and that's been a little bit difficult, and move you to point B. Meanwhile, I try to stay focused on safeguarding the assets of the organization. I try not to play the blame game. It was somebody else's fault way back here that did all that. Okay, when we move to point B, whatever anybody that was doing that was incorrect, hopefully gets corrected at point B, and we just move on. Try to avoid the noise created internally and externally, and staying focused on moving from point A to B and trying to safeguard the assets of the organization. So, audit. The latest timeline from the auditors is the week of December 6th. That shocked us a little bit, but we have a Zoom meeting with them scheduled tomorrow morning to go over what is called the open items list. It's a pretty extensive list. With Sandy P being out on medical, slowed us down. Our concern with the week of December 6th is maybe cash flow issues. What we want to do is try to avoid some of the things that we may have done in previous years, and that's dipping into the debt service and the sinking funds for the cash flow. The other thing I want to do is comment on a little bit about, especially when we're talking about material weaknesses, And the skills, knowledge, and experience, which is a term that they use in accounting all the time, is called SKE. People have the skills, knowledge, and experience to do their job. Well, if you remember reading in Sobery's report last March, when he described a district, you know, it's a train wreck, a big mess. Big mess is probably better than a train wreck, but he said the department lacks the SKE and continues to create the highest level of internal control violations. The auditors this fall, when they were doing a preliminary review for the 2021 audit, says seems unlikely they had the SKE to properly oversee and review. The whole point is, going back to the material weaknesses, when we're talking about trying to settle those over a 3 or 4 or 5 year period of time, okay, there really is no need to do that. If you have staff that have the skills, knowledges, and experiences, they get kind of wiped out in a year, okay? So there's no need to try to make develop a plan to work on these 2 this year and 2 more the next year. If you got the right personnel in the office, it should be cleaned up pretty quick. Real quickly, it's transition time. It's time to move forward, and it's time to try to find the SKE necessary for a properly functioning business office. I've developed a transition plan, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. We need to get back to generally accepted accounting principles and people that have that experience. And so we can't continue to function the way that we currently are. It's just sloppy, messy, inconvenient, whatever term you want to put on it. So there'll be more to come on that in a few minutes. Other thoughts, you know, we need to continue to work on our roles, responsibilities, and expectations. All right, that's what makes the organization run smoothly. Clarity and understanding go a long way in developing trust and a smooth work environment. Continue to work on our communication, including the demeanor. Continue to enhance the trust between the board and administration. And I mentioned this to you before, to create something like a bill review committee that meets before Board of Education meetings. Now, you can change the name of the committee if you want to, but the whole point would be it's an opportunity for the board to discuss with the administration issues that they have, particularly in the business, finance, operations area. In general, the board treasurer chairs that committee, and every 4 months, 2 board members rotate on and off, so that over a 1 year period of time, every board member is on the committee. Then the other thing I wanted to do is, and there'll be some information coming at you shortly, is that we need to give some serious consideration to providing some administrative assistance support in purchasing, particularly in the operations and maintenance area, okay? There's a strong need to try to help keep things not necessarily not organized, but to keep them in a status quo and moving forward on a straight line. I wish I would have been here when somebody decided to move both food service and transportation into Mr. Garland's arena, because that's the same conversation you had about the grants writer and a curriculum person, okay? Now, the important thing is, I think in a curriculum point of view, most curriculum people understand grants. I don't know what Mr. Garland knows about food service, what he got at food service and transportation. So with that, any quick questions?
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Mr. Garrick, I've lost I misplaced mine. This is the status report investigation update. Mr. Garrick, I do have a question, Mr. Dixon. You said that you're going to meet with the auditors tomorrow?
Yes. We have a status meeting with them tomorrow morning at 10.
Okay. Status meeting. So, I got a 3-page.
So should there, I see there are 3 documents?
Do you need something?
3 separate documents?
Yes. Judy has. There you go. I have
Okay. So what I've just passed out is our investigation report. Second document are documents referenced in our report. And finally is a business transition plan that Mr. Dixon developed that he asked me to pass out to address after my report. So, I apologize for that. So on September 27th, the board appointed Clark Hill to conduct an independent investigation of the district's business and finance practices. On October 11th, we gave 2 weeks later, an interim report in terms of the things that we were focusing upon. And now 4 weeks later, we're providing a report based upon our document review with the business office and all the information we've been able to glean. The investigation, as intimated in our interim report, reveals that there are areas of serious concern regarding the mismanagement of the district's business and finance practices. And to give just a high level, I know the documents you have, the board is going to need some time to go through those. I'll just give a high level overview. First, with regard, there are 7 areas I'm going to touch on. With regard to competitive bidding violations, it appears that over the past year, there's approximately $700,000 in purchases for supplies and building repairs that were not bid according to state law or board policy. These are serious problems as the consequences for not following state law include fines and possible imprisonment. Secondly, there's been repeated failures to report and deposit federal payroll tax. Over the past year, there were 5 times failure to file identified by the IRS and 9 times late. And this is not the end. Typically, the IRS is 6 months behind, so we anticipate there are going to be some other notices coming as to things that happened within the past 6 months. With credit card policy, there's repeated violations by those having credit cards, failing to provide contemporaneous reports detailing the purchases and the educational purpose. We understand that Raymond and Miller Johnson are following up on that, but plainly, when we've looked at it, plainly there's an overall failure to follow the board policy with respect to use of credit cards. Number 4, the golf outing was brought to our attention as having concerns. The district to date, we've not been able to account for as much as $8,000 in sales and inventory related to the August 9th golf fundraiser event. While it's assumed that some of the inventory was used for resale, there's no records that confirmed really how the inventory was used. In addition, there's some question as to whether some expenditures were made for alcoholic beverages with district funds, which is prohibited. And we've not been able to get to the bottom of that, but that's the question that yet needs to be investigated. Number 5, the school loan revolving fund. We did miss the deadline. Fortunately, the district did not need to use the fund recently, although Mr. Dixon just mentioned that there may be some cash flow issues coming up. And number 6, with regard to that, we did find that the district has failed to allocate property tax revenues as required to the debt retirement fund and sinking fund from a period from 4 to 6 months, raising the possibility that Mr. Dixon intimated that restricted funds were possibly used for general fund purposes. We don't have documentation of that. That's a possibility. And certainly that you're not going to do that in the future, that Mr. Dixon's taking care of that. But we did find that there was this long delay from 4 to 6 months that is certainly a problem. And finally, in the area of CTE purchases and inventory management, there are problems. There was a 2020 report from your previous consultant that identified, we looked through those documents. It looks as though, in fact, there are some questionable purchase orders and problems with inventory and property management that we've not been able to confirm, but it appears that the concerns raised in that report are legitimate. I'm not going to get into the details. We didn't identify in the report the specific vendors involved, because it's not their problem, it's really ours. But I did want to jump to the conclusions and recommendations, because it ties into what Mr. Dixon just related. As just described, there are many areas of concern relating to the district's business and financial practices. And normally we'd recommend specific and distinct solutions for those various kind of problems. However, after hearing Mr. Dixon and going through all the concerns that we've identified, the problems in the district's business office are not separate and distinct. They're really basic and systematic failures. And trying to address them in a separate and distinct way is simply, we think, not going to work. Again, as Mr. Dixon mentioned, your auditor identified 14 serious problems, and most recently they indicated only one of the 14 serious problems have been completely addressed at this point. In March, Mr. Sovey gave a report in terms of the status of the district's business office, and he indicated that it was, quote, still not functioning well at all for reporting purposes, and went on to say it is a train wreck and maybe the biggest accounting mess I've seen in my career. Subsequent to that, Mr. Dixon has been here since, I don't know, mid-August or so. He recommended in late September an independent investigation, which we're a part of here. And now we've seen, he's shared with us his business transition plan. And I'll just read the last two paragraphs of our report. Given the seriousness and depth of the district's current business office dysfunction, we recommend that the board give serious consideration to Mr. Dixon's recommendation that would result in a general comprehensive overhaul of the district's business and finance functions. Without such an overhaul, it is doubtful that the normal recommendations to fix separate, discrete problems will be successful. In addition, given the significant violations of law that appear to have been routinely occurring in the district's business office, in the interest of transparency and mitigating any consequences related thereto, as well as ensuring that the district will address all the problems with its business and finance practices, the board should consider a referral to and seek the assistance of outside governmental agencies, including the State Attorney General, and with respect to the district CTE issues, the United States Department of Education, the latter of which has already reached out to the district. These outside agencies will help assure that all the district's business and finance issues will be properly addressed, and furthermore, obtain whatever information that we've not been able to in the course of our investigation. Again, it's our experience that being proactive with agencies results in assistance. And so with that, I know that there's a lot to review. This may not be the right meeting to take questions, but I'll answer whatever I can.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I do.
Ms. Kennard?
This is Kennard. Okay, so throughout this total document here, I've heard that you're unable to review documentation, you don't have the information, you can't confirm. What does that mean? That means that it wasn't available, or it wasn't provided to you, or what exactly does that mean?
We believe that we have all the documentation that exists in the business office. Through Mr. Dixon, we worked primarily through Mr. Dixon and Ms. McNabb, trying to find whatever is available. And whatever is on the system, whatever records that were available, we reviewed, and that we came up with this. We did make some inquiries for other documents that may be available. Nothing was forthcoming. I think some of the employees are concerned because of the potential violations of law. So we're leaving open the possibility that there are additional documents that could support that the district acted appropriately. However, looking at the board minutes, the board action, it's pretty clear that there you would see records of competitive bidding that simply didn't occur. You look at the federal IRS payroll taxes, we know that that's pretty black and white. In terms of like the golf outing, there may be some additional evidence that we've not been able to get. And again, this is one of the reference by going outside agencies, they may be able to get records more easily than we can to get to the bottom of these things. But certainly what we've been able to find demonstrates that you have a dysfunctional business office. And, I mean, you had Raymond is telling you that, you had Mr. Sovey tell you that, you have Mr. Dixon saying that. And rather than try and piecemeal this with like separate and discrete recommendations, we concur with the recommendation of Mr. Dixon that you just do a general overhaul by turning this over to a firm entity that is expert in turnarounds, and for a period of 6 to 9 months, fix the office and then hand it over to somebody who's going to be your permanent employee. But to bring in an individual, and rather than a team of people, we think is not going to, you won't be successful.
I have a question.
Go ahead. I'll get it later.
Thank you. But, who, did you interview any individuals? And when we talk about the competitive bidding, I know a lot, you know, we go back to September with that, and we had, you know, like you say, we're not pointing fingers, but no one wants to say who was in the business office at that point in time to give direction and, you know, oversight in terms of the practices of making a purchase and, you know, doing POs or whatnot to get your proper bidding. So, and then when you go back and you look at the audit, we didn't even get the audit review until the end of February. So by the time, you know, we get the audit, it's time, our superintendent was actually supposed to have an open heart surgery back in March, but for whatever reason, you know, health reasons, it got postponed. So we got our audit findings in March. So we're, you know, trying to get in there and start to work. Yes, there are things, we already knew this, and you've heard me say it before. We already knew this office was jacked up from the floor up, you know. I'm just looking at, you know, so we went back a year, because that's when I asked, are we looking at other things prior to September, from September to June? It just looks like it's, what is my word? I can't even think of it right now, but we're looking at it here. But there were other people in places letting people, or saying this is the actual process of how we do this versus correcting it when it was brought forth. We as a board, yes, we've asked about certain competitive bidding, and I know how RIMC is if there's certain things we go through what Rangwisa has. We can't just blame it all on, say, Bill Garland. You know, yes, we gave him he got transportation, he got food service, he got a lot of things he didn't know anything about. So when we look at everything, my main question is, who did you interview outside of just asking for receipts?
We asked Mr. Interim Superintendent McNatt to provide any additional information he could. We had some questions we asked him to get. He was unable to get any additional information. And we believe that we had enough documentation through the business office that we think we've got a pretty good picture. And again, you've just said you know that you have a broken business office. Our investigation report confirms what Raymond, Sovey, and Mr. Dixon have been telling you, and we're supporting, again, trying to fix it to, you know, where you are now, you've got a broken system. Going forward, Mr. Dixon, who's been in the business for 40 plus years, I've worked with him, and I think in 7 other districts, because he works with districts and deficits. I'm called in to work with districts and deficit as well to negotiate the contracts and make their way out. He and I both have expertise in working out of these problems. He's come forward with a recommendation that to do an overhaul and to contract it out for a period of time. Based upon our experience and based upon what we found, we think that is a good solution. Again, our investigation was where is the district? Do a report. We're not looking to lay blame. And it's broken, and we think his recommendation of a business transition plan to have an outside agency take it over makes a lot of sense. And in terms of what happened, we focused on really the last school year because that was covered by the audit. You know, if we went back to previous school years, would you find similar problems? Yes, You probably would.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's going to help you decide how you're going to move forward. And we thought this is about where are we today, so what do we need to do to move forward?
So, Mr. Garrick, when you talk about a dysfunctional business office and a general overhaul, I know that at one point when we were discussing as a board posting the position for the Director of Finance, Dr. Edmondson had briefly brought up about outsourcing that. What does that look like and what does that benefit to us?
I'm not quite sure I understand your...
You're talking about a dysfunctional business office. That's where we are today at point A, and we want to get to a better point B.
Yeah.
When you're talking about having somebody come in and do a general overhaul for a period of time, what does that look like, and how does that benefit us prior to posting that position?
Again, we think, right, maybe Mr. Dixon may be in a better position to...
Because I remember he briefly said that, but we didn't hear it.
I think what you want to do is kind of, if you can, just kind of remove the business office from the entity for a while. You can't do that, but just visualize that. You want to outsource your functions for 6 to 9 months. You need to bring in somebody, a firm, it's probably going to be a firm or a group of people that have knowledge in doing these turnarounds, as Mr. Garrick had said, okay? And are familiar with school districts. You need specifically some people at pretty high levels of accounting, and you definitely need somebody in the procurement, the purchasing area, all right? Let them get a hold of the organization and turn it around, flip it, get you back headed towards point B, okay? And it's important that we do that, and it takes that amount of time because you are going to be disrupting behaviors or changing behaviors that are pretty ingrained, and you're going to get a kickback, okay? And you're going to get another kickback until they get solidified. So it takes time after time after time, all right? The last, if it's a 9-month contract, and I think it would be, to be smart, is sometime in December, end it next August, get them through the budget development process, get your audit squared away so when the auditors show up in September, 6 weeks before September, the middle of July or so, you post the positions, you hire your director of accounting, you hire your accountant, and you bring them in and you transition them in with that team so that they're on the ground, feet running, okay? They have to experience some parts of the audit. For us to bring somebody in as a director of accounting and or an accountant that's relatively new would probably be catastrophic. First of all, they wouldn't survive the kickback that they would get on the change if they tried to make the change. I will tell you, on a daily basis, I get it on simple purchase orders that I look at and I go, what is this? And I flip it back and I get a nasty little comment. Okay, well, what do you mean, what is this? It's an invoice. Oh, really? I realize it's an invoice for what? Okay? Those types of behaviors are, and I'm not trying to be critical of people, they're just going, I always do it this way. I've always processed it that way, and now you're asking me why. Well, I'm asking you why because I have no idea what you purchase when you get a listing of something from some organization that says something like, and I had one the other day that was WP 000476, 12 of them. WP 000478, 12 of them. Okay, what are they? You just send me the invoice. I mean, so that, to get people, and it's not going to be difficult, and I don't want to be beating up on people, but the reality is the changes are going to have to be significant. They're ingrained here, and it's going to be tough to change them. And somebody new, even if they're experienced, 2 people new coming in are going to have a difficult time trying to maintain day-to-day, okay, and clean up some of the messiness that's down here. Right now, Sandy G is working on 500 FID errors. FID is the financial information database that we submit to the state of Michigan. She ran it on a trial basis. It kicked back 500 errors on us. Okay? So she's been working for about 7 days trying to clean that up while she's trying to help Hooper over here get squared away with the grants. You need somebody that's going to clean up a little bit, and then somebody up at the top that's strong.
Mr. Dixon,
Yeah.
you mentioned that, we need to solicit assistance from the State Attorney General and the United States Department of Ed. And so how would they help support what's taking place at this time?
Well, I think that was,
So, with regard to the U.S. Department of Education has already reached out to the district. And with the CTE program, they would be able to provide assistance to making sure that those processes are correct. Again, you had a pretty comprehensive report in 2020 done by your consultant, and he identified a number of issues. We found no evidence, documentary evidence, that those have been addressed. And in terms of the scope of our engagement, we thought, we have enough in terms of making the recommendation that we are today. In terms, you've got problems. Here's how we want to be part of the solution, how to fix it. We think that the reaching out, again, in our experience, in these other governmental agencies like you we're there to help. They'll ensure that that the CTE problems and the AG, in terms of the competitive bidding, are going to be done appropriately. And frankly, they're going to get people's attention. In terms of the pushback that Mr. Dixon's talking about, they're going to help alleviate some of that pushback so that it actually gets done.
Mr. Dixon, when we talk about bringing in a firm and disrupting behaviors, and then they help us get this functional and organized, and then turn it over to us. In that process, like you're saying, we need administrative support for purchasing.
yes.
So when they're in, are they identifying these positions that we need that we don't have, and letting us know that, rather than just fixing it and leaving, and then we've still got these holes we're unaware of?
Well, I think the answer to that question in general is yes. I think they would suggest to you that, the current format in which you're operating is not the most successful or most but efficient. Okay, and they would suggest to you that you ought to look at doing this, that, or the other thing. I have my ideas on what should be done, and there's a bunch of things we could do in purchasing very simply to help, particularly help Mr. Garland and probably Mr. Cooper to some extent, by just changing some policies around and some regulations, okay? And get them so that they've got some breathing room. Because you have $13 million worth, it's 13, right, of ESSER funds coming at you, all right? And that's going to hit Mr. Cooper and Mr. Garland hard. And Mr. Garland definitely needs, I believe he needs, and he'll probably tell you he could use something else, but you ought to listen to him, because he needs some administrative support to help him with this day-to-day stuff, to help him process paper, and pretty high-level administrative support, because these people are going to have to be familiar with rules, regulations, laws, and things of that nature. That's my opinion. Would they concur with that? I don't know. Maybe they would say some other format. But yeah, I think they would suggest that to you. Maybe the format that you have in the office isn't as efficient as what it should be. The only thing I do know, the two people that are in there that are your employees are overwhelmed, just like everybody else in central office, okay? They are just, well, probably throughout the whole district. I mean, it's just something that you've been doing this for so long. Like I said to you before, it's kind of a standard operating procedure, and you just kind of got to get it disrupted. And you can do that through a third party, easier than you can through your own employees.
Ms. Kennard?
No, let Terrell go.
Okay.
Because I already spoke. Let her go
Okay,
ahead, and I'll come after her. Okay. I think Mrs. Wester asked about have you talked to, Dr. Edmondson? We had, Mr. Garland raise a packet indicating not so.
Indicating what?
He raised the packet when he just said, when this gentleman was speaking and said that there were things that were missing, and he raised an entire packet indicating that these are receipts or things that are needed.
These were actually some questions that I was given by Mr. McNatt last board meeting. I finished the questions and have them here with the explanations that I had. And I asked Mr. McNatt who to give them to. He said, not me. And so I sent Mrs. I pull up her email. I sent her an email and asked her who do I send these to? I just didn't want to give them to anyone.
That's right.
And so
Right.
I've had them for over a week. What? You know, and again, I'm not in this blame game.
Yes.
But for them to say that we didn't want to be forthcoming. We gave all our receipts for our credit cards, which we had done already to Mr. Baker. And as far as Mr. Dixon, I don't want to give anybody any pushback. I want things to be done right. Dr. Edmondson recognized way back that we had an issue. I didn't even realize we did, but we do, and we want to do things right. The district wants to do things right, but a lot of these things, I think, could be answered. I mean, like, there were some things that were unsmart that nobody found, that we did have competitive bids for. And some of the things, and I'll just say this, were done under COVID emergency, where you couldn't buy toilet paper. And so when I talked to a former finance director about certain aspects of it, these were things to protect the kids, COVID screens and the ionizers that to open school, we had to have. That was my understanding. So not saying it was all done the way it should, but letting you know it was not done with any intent other than protecting our kids. So I do have this. I have no problem handing it over. I just didn't know who to give it to. And Mr. Cooper knows that I did this.
I think one of the things that where we've got people, and thanks for the thing, you don't need to be on the defense, and I'm sorry if you feel like you are, and I could understand why you are. I mean, really, but the reality is you've got a situation, okay, and it just simply needs to be corrected. It's been going on way too long, all right? And one of the ways to do that is to just kind of remove the business office function into another entity for a 6 to 9 month period of time. There's a few firms out there that do that, one of them just quit doing that. And then just gradually phase yourself back into an operations where you've got a director of finance and an accountant, if that's the format that you want to continue with, okay? The key is that putting somebody new in there, they're going to have an extremely difficult time making the necessary changes.
How do you come to the conclusion that it would be from 6 to 9 months? Where does that estimation come about? And then also, I brought to the table during our last meeting that Ms. Claire has indicated that she would be able to step in and help bring things back to be able to provide substantial help in this whole process because she's identified things from the past. How would that help?
Well, I don't want to suggest to a contractor who's going to be their help. I would suggest to them, and they'll probably suggest to us, that they need at least a 2-week transition and that they should probably use Sandy G for whatever period of time that they can to help clean up some of the things at the bottom. Now, I want to just go back to, and I don't want to get into this whole name thing, but go back to the skills, knowledges, and experiences that we were talking about. All right? And back in March, Sylvie said you didn't have it. Who are the people in the business office then? Your auditor said you didn't have it later on in September or whatever period of time they did their initial assessment, okay? So if you haven't got the skills and knowledge and experience, I would suggest you try to stay away from that a little bit. Is there a place for her to provide assistance? Yeah, but that's not, I don't want to have to tell a contractor, you need to use this person. I would suggest to them who they should use and for some period of time for transition purposes. But I definitely wouldn't tell them to employ somebody or to look at this individual versus that individual, mostly because they have their own teams that they come in to do those things. So, they probably got a specialist in purchasing, they definitely have people in accounting. So I don't know what that role would be. I mean, I want to tell the contractor what that role would be either. Yeah.
The question was, how did you come to 6 to 9 months?
Oh, 6 to 9, I'm sorry. Well, because I think that by the time you get things cleaned up, you could be well into February or March, all right? And first of all, that depends on how many people they bring in, too. The number of people they bring in depends on how much, really, what the cost the district wants to pay. But I think it could very well be 3 to 6 months. Now, you're going to start making 3 months on that. You're going to start making changes during that period of time. That's got to solidify and sink in. Let them build you a budget. Let them build you a budget probably in a manner that maybe you haven't seen before, that could be very helpful for you in future references to budgets. Get through the tax season, get through the budget, then start working on the audit for the fall. Sometime in July, I'd post that position and bring some people in. Whatever alignment that is at that point in time, which we would refer to as a director of accounting or director of finance and an accountant. Now, if it gets accelerated, then, have an out in the clause. I mean, you're an attorney here, you just have an out on the clause and say, hey, look, we think, or they'll come to you and say, well, look, we think we're ready to hand this over to you, and get things started.
So, Mr. Dixon, I have a question. I know it was so brief, and I don't even remember when that Dr. Edmondson had just briefly spoke about this option. Is this something that we would need to competitively bid out?
No, it's a service.
Or is this just, okay, I just want...
I think if you look at the plan there, what we intend to do, I mean, there's a timeline that we put in there, and there's kind of a thing we'd throw in the paper to say, hey, if anybody's interested in this, give us a call, okay? So we've got somewhere around November 15th for approval to move forward, publicize and contract prospective contractors, okay? And then finalize the selection by the 29th and get board approval for a 6 to 9 month contract in December. December 6th, the week of December 6th. That should get us squared away so that hopefully by January 1, you are squared away. I know the holidays are a tough time to do a transition because it's the volume and types of work that you run into are not there like they normally would be. So it's a tight timeline, but we need to, I think we need to get going on that. And what you were referring to, Mrs. Piles, is I think what Dr. Edmondson was trying to talk a little bit about.
And we would also have the guidance of the Attorney General while we're doing this, so we're not just, so we're making, I guess the concern is we've identified all these problems, and we want to correct these issues and have a functional business department. So we don't want to risk missing something.
Well, I think, I'm going to say, if you're going to take the advice and contract this out, when you work with the Department of Education or Attorney General, they're going to see that, and they're going to work with you and just make sure that it just emphasize, I guess, support the changes that the outside company are going to be trying to put into place.
Thank you. Ms. Wester?
Mr. Garrett?
He's not working. Just couldn't hear you.
I just had one more question. I know I was asking if you had spoke to anyone in regards to everything you were looking at. I was looking at the golf outing. Did you talk to anyone in particular about the golf outing? I know when I came and done things, and there was only one person that was handling a lot of the golf outing stuff, so did you ever get a chance?
Actually, Jessica Milligan worked with me, and she made some inquiries, I'm not sure, and worked with Mike. I'm not sure the extent, who she talked to. But we, again, that is just a small piece of
Right,
a bigger problem. And we didn't view that as being primary, but because it was raised, we did want to indicate that this is like an example. We have $8,000 of inventory or cash missing, and we'll have to go hunt for it to find out where it is.
Well, that's why I was asking the question. That's what, if it was like $1,000, I'd be like, okay, you know, but not really okay. But we're talking $8,000 that we're saying is missing from the receipts or whatnot. I was just my question again was, did we talk to anyone in the office that was actually handling the golf outing as it related to what came in and who tallied up the donations and the food and you know?
The answer to that question is yes. I mean, both the county clerks in the office and Cindy work different aspects of the golf outing. So we don't have a problem. It doesn't appear to be a problem with donations and people that like paid for their golf and paid for their dinner. We do have a situation where there's, you know, kind of one situation where we don't have a dinner, where we can't track the resources for the dinner that the person paid. That doesn't mean it's not somewhere. It's just, where is it? So, you know, where the situation really is the whole thing, go back to the business office, okay? And it should have been set up somewhere like an activity fund at one of the buildings. Here's the revenues, here's the expenditures, bottom line. And that's not there. It's here, there, and everywhere. Now, I'm not being critical of the county clerks that are there. Somebody should have set that up for them, okay? So it's a matter of processing. Then you don't get into these things that don't look good. Okay?
Right, and I guess
so how much?
I bring it up because, you know, we gave a number, so it really, you know, I'm looking at it from a business, you know, point. If like I say, I run a little league football and cheerleading program. I have vendors that will, hey, I'm going to do X, Y, Z for you. Here is this. I bought this. You get the receipt. You get to keep the proceeds. So there may not be that receipt of how much it cost me. You just see that I brought in X amount of dollars.
Well, you need to net it. You really do.
But I understand what you're saying, but we're talking about, you just mentioned something about someone had a receipt about a dinner and you couldn't find it.
Yeah, not the receipt so much. We can't track the cash.
The cash flow. So that's what I'm saying. As far as I know, because I know when I came up and purchased a couple of tickets, I dealt with one person. And that's what I was asking, if that one person that was actually handling it was talked to find out where receipts were,
No.
or if things were.
Did we interview the people no, I've done, that actually, like sold apparel. There was 6 or 8 or 10 people that did that.
No, I'm saying the one person that was in charge of collecting all the funds that came in when, say you walked in and you wanted to purchase a ticket. There was one particular person that handled that.
Okay. No, I didn't speak to that person.
Okay.
No.
That's all, I'm just trying to clarify in terms of, when we're talking about doing an investigation, we're looking at papers, but are we also talking to some of the staff that are in there or people around to get more clarity?
Yeah. No, I don't disagree. The thing that set off the golf outing was something unrelated.
Madam
to-
President, Madam President,
I'm sorry, Mr. Gary. Ms. Kennard?
yeah, just let me add to this. And I hear what Trustee Wester is asking and everyone else that's around, but looking at it from the bigger picture, irregardless of what the information in this package is being presented to us in terms of where we are and where we should be going,
Right.
means that from an accounting perspective, there's a need for better, stronger internal controls.
Yes.
And what that means is that irregardless of, doing your investigation, who you interacted, interviewed, or whatever, there still should have been a closing of the books.
Yes.
When the activity, or any program or whatever, has a begin and end date, there's usually, if it's in a program or whatever, you got a director, you have a coordinator, or you have a president, or you have a secretary, treasurer, whatever, you close those books. And when you close those books, what is entailed is your ledger. It is your accounting, your foundation, your donations, your expenditures, your summary of the event, and you do a recap, okay? And that recap consists of the future of what you're going to do moving forward. And so in answering this, what I hear you saying is that was missing. That piece was missing, the internal control to identify, because the business office of this district is the sole, next to the board's responsibility in being able to be accountable and being able to respond to who we have to report to, and that is our constituents, our residents, okay?
Yeah.
Not only them, the state, the feds, okay? And so that's what he's saying is missing here.
Yeah, it's not.
Okay, so it's not missing, it's not that we're not doing it, it's just that the process is so archived that it's broken, that there's some areas where we need to strengthen. There's no pointing of fingers. I'm not pointing fingers and looking at any one person, in central office and saying, you're not doing your job. What it is that I myself, when I've worked with these consulting and these agencies who came into the operation, which actually was a good thing, because what it did was it identified our weaknesses in the process and to strengthen it. So when we were able to move forward in hiring people, they came in where they could start off with a fresh beginning,
Right.
Understanding the history and being able to move it forward. And so that case, and I'm not saying to any of the board members in which way you should be thinking. I think this is a tremendous amount of information in front of us for us to digest and making decisions and have in great, conversation. We're asking questions, that's true, okay, but I also think that we need to take the opportunity to look at all these documentations that was brought before us today, because I just saw it for the first time, digest it, and then we come back together and say, okay, these are more in-depth questions pertaining to this, and how do we derive at that? I think this request is something that is serious. Some of the allegations, I kind of glanced over it, is serious because it's at the state and federal level, okay? And it does and will have an impact on the district. Okay, so looking at one program and what didn't happen, we have to be accountable as a board to respond to it. Okay, they're gonna hold us responsible for this. Okay, we're not gonna be looking at the residents, at the same time, we gotta maintain our school system where our students have a school system to come to. Right? Okay, so my goal is to, if we get ahead of it, if we show we are ahead of it, and we're having dialogue and discussion, okay, that warrants, regardless of what may come down the road, whether we getting slapped with a fine or something because something wasn't done, okay? We have staff that were put in positions,
who had to take on a tremendous amount of work.
Mhm.
And although we had staff that was hired who some of the basic, I just glanced over this, your basic accounting functions, you know, you don't take on responsibility at that level and don't know how to submit and meet deadlines. Okay, that doesn't happen. Okay, so I'm not pointing my fingers and saying that our staff were inadequate. They're not. They wouldn't have been hired in the positions that they're holding. It's just that we just need to, as a board, look at some of these things again, look at some of these processes and work with administration, and we need to revise, and we need to give that charge to the administration, the interim superintendent or the superintendent, that some of these things are archived and needs to be changed where it needs to be streamlined or made better, or technology is driving the decisions where we're still doing manual things. I recognize that as I walk through, you know, some things. And so I'm not saying that we're not functioning as a district, but we're doing the best, and we are the best, and we want to continue to be. So looking at the recommendation and not making a quick emotional decision. We need time to look at this, and we need to digest it, and we need to come back as a board and say, and have another dialogue with, you know, the individuals that brought this before. And so I'm just making a recommendation, Madam President, that we allow the board to take that time to review these documents.
Yes, thank you for that. Yes, we were all just given a lot of information. Thank you, Mr. Garrick, Mr. Dixon. So yes, give the board time to read through, and if we have any questions, let you know. But if it please the board, for the sake of time, that we move on to the next item on the agenda now. Thank you, Mr. Dixon and Mr. Garrick. And Vice President Kennard. Next, unfinished business. There is none. Report of the board subcommittees. I have not been notified of any. Report of the board president. We learned that with MASB, in previous years we have had one delegate and one voting delegate and one alternate, but we learned this week that MASB is allowing us to have 2 voting delegates and 2 alternates. So currently, I know when we thought it was 1 and 1, I was the voting delegate and Ms. Wester was the alternate. So now we can have 2 voting delegates and 2 alternates. And I know, Ms. Terrell, you sent an email expressing interest. I have not received anything from anyone else.
I think it's too late to change. According to an email we got from Ms. Paula the other day, it is too late. November 1st was the deadline.
It was. I know that last year, if we showed it in the minutes, sometimes, I mean, if we're going to be there and we show in our minutes that the board approved it, they will allow it. It's something we can either let it go, or I know, Ms. Terrell, you expressed interest. We can, as a board, take that action item if the board wishes, without that guarantee, but they do accept minutes as proof. So if it please the board, or we can move on, whatever. Okay. Let me see. Paula, do you remember what they have us down for? I can look it up.
They had us both down as delegates. Right, for 2 delegates.
Okay.
Correct, that's when she sent the email
Okay,
for the.
so yes, it looks like what we have is delegate 1, Debbie Piles, delegate 2, Ursula Wester, and we don't have an alternate 1 or alternate 2. Ms. Terrell, would you like to be on there to have that opportunity? Okay. Is anyone else interested in being an alternate? Okay, so I move that the Board of Education approve Denisa Terrell as alternate number 1, and Sue Evans as alternate number 2 for the 2021 MASB Delegate Assembly on Thursday, November 11th at 6 p.m. Is there support? Moved by Piles, supported by Kennard. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. We are at communications from the public. Let me see. Okay. Guidelines for public participation at board meetings. I'm sorry. And this is from our bylaws. The board will establish guidelines concerning public participation at board meetings. The guidelines will include, but not be limited to, limiting the time any individual may address the board, which is 3 minutes, requiring individuals who wish to address the board to identify themselves, their address, and any organization they may represent, advising the public that generally the board and individual board members will not directly respond to comments or questions that arise during the public participation portion of the meeting, requiring individuals who wish to address the board to direct their comments to the entire board and not to individual board members, the superintendent, or other school district employees or members of the audience, prohibiting behavior that is intemperate, abusive, defamatory, or discourteous, or that otherwise interferes with the orderly conduct and timely completion of the board meeting, and excluding from the meeting an individual who engages in conduct that constitutes a breach of the peace. Ms. Evans, will you please call those who have submitted? Does anybody else who has not yet submitted a form wish to speak during public comment? If so, please bring your form to Ms. Evans. And Ms. Evans, you could.
Rita Hampton.
I'm still here. I still use my time up as I walk forward. Someone said to do that, so I will. As everybody know, I'm still working on the recall. It was denied, again, for lack of clarity, which I can't understand, but I'm gonna keep on going. They are asking me down there at the county building, do I need a cubicle? No, I don't. I'll be back and I'll submit again at the end of the week. And I'll keep doing it. And I said, I never give in and I never give up. So how long it takes, just bear with me. I did reside and let somebody else look at it, my lawyer cousin, but I'm not gonna count on that. But let me say this to you, and I don't wanna hold up my time. Every time I hit a recall, that goes in, I'm a librarian also a genealogist, goes into the record. Whenever you wanna look for those people, Piles, Kennard, and Evans, their relatives wanna look and do some genealogy on the family, they will be able to go in the index in the county building and find their name. Every time I go, their names will be there. Now it's in there 2 times, and it's gonna go again. I'm not gonna give up. And if their relatives wanna know what they did, their ancestors, what they did, they'll see recall, and they'll say, I wonder why. But they also see my name. She kept coming. I kept coming because I still don't think this right. Still have not heard anything about Mr. Dr. Edmondson when he's coming back. I haven't heard anything that Mr. Dixon or the lawyer say anything that condemned him. I will also say this. What I couldn't understand is, somebody, Mr. Bergeron, I think it was, brought up the idea or brought up the thought that why did somebody call the lawyer and asked, is it fair or is it legal for a superintendent to endorse a mayoral candidate? But it was all right when I looked on the floor, I went down the street and looking for materials that I see Mrs. Piles endorsed Lambert. Well, you see what happened? Like hang around with like. So the people and the citizens of Romulus did what they did. And I would say she probably changed the whole election. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hampton. Ms. Evans, who is next?
Sarah Carter.
Good evening, Sarah Carter, REA President. So I have several concerns related to agenda items. The first one is I would like to know why were public comments for agenda items omitted tonight? I know Ms. Wester brought it up at the last meeting to put them back on the agenda, and they were omitted again. So I don't understand why some meetings they're on there, other meetings not on there. I also would like to know, as you know, I received the school board packet that you all receive. So on October 25th, that packet that went out, there was an interim HR person listed in the board packet at $400 a day. The person that was listed in this board packet for this meeting is listed at $500 a day. So I would like to know why there is a $100 daily difference from someone that was going to have this job 2 weeks ago to the person now. $500 a week seems like a significant increase. I would also like to know when during public comment right now, sometimes people are timed and sometimes people aren't. Sometimes people are up here and speak for 10 or 15 minutes. Sometimes the 3-minute timer goes off and they're gavelled and sent away. It's very easy to see who's being targeted, so you may need to want to be careful with that because it has not been going unnoticed. Ms. Kennard, I want to address a comment you made during Ms. Gowan's presentation where you asked about the student-teacher ratio in the virtual program. This is something that is a mandatory subject of bargaining. It must be negotiated with the union. And this was something that Ms. Hazlett and I were working on the second week of school. We had a verbal agreement. We were getting ready to do a letter of understanding. And then with all the board shenanigans and everything that happened, she quit. So just so you know, this is still an unresolved issue that we have not done. So with all of that said, I would like to know, as it's been stated on Channel 4 News, that the investigation was not about Dr. Edmondson. He was not being investigated. So the staff, the community, we want to know, now that it looks like the investigation is done, when is our superintendent coming back?
Cindy Mullen.
I'm Sydney Mullen. I'm one of your speech paths. I'm tired. I'm tired. Physically, mentally. How do you not know who's in your building? Who's doing your jobs? I sat here tonight. Part of my job is observing. So I watched you guys. I looked at the agenda. You guys couldn't complete any of these agenda items. If I walked into an IEP and I couldn't answer any of the IEP questions to my parents, where would I be? I certainly wouldn't be standing here for 26 years. How do you know who's not running central office? It's kind of easy. There's nobody there. Why do you need an email to say, I'm doing somebody else's job? There's only a few people doing things. It's pretty obvious what Cooper's doing. It's pretty obvious who's helping out with special ed. It's pretty obvious who was helping out with HR. The only people that were standing, the only people that are still standing, your foundation. Your foundation is strong. We're exhausted. Stop paying contract. I hear you're paying $700 and some for another contract for the superintendent. I hear $500 for a contract for HR. I sit here and watch the contract for the two gentlemen that I'm surely are very nice and very intelligent. But I'm watching my watch hourly. It's $160 an hour. They sat here for over 3 hours. Sure could go for another speech pass salary. Just saying, we're tired. Hire people. Hire people that'll stay. Make an environment that people want to stay. Those that are here, that have been here the long term, you mentioned it. Those that have been here a long time, we're here because we love the kids. We don't like the BS that's going on. We're not here for that. We're here for the kids. Hire people that'll stay for the kids. Get the central office straightened out. Those that love the kids will stay. But hiring contract people, when you got people at the foundation watching money go out the door, watching agenda items never get answered, that wouldn't keep my job. Just saying, we're tired.
Emily Maturin, sorry if I misspelled it or mispronounced.
Good afternoon, good evening, I guess. My name's Emily Maturin. I'm a 4th grade teacher at Hill Creek Elementary. I want to start by talking about school culture and climate being a really, really major concern right now. It is a trickle-down effect. And I have to tell you, just like we've heard before, we are exhausted. We are understaffed, underappreciated, underpaid. That's another subject, but we are not thriving at the building level and at the staff level. We're not thriving, even though we're doing our job 110% every day. We are not thriving. We're exhausted. When we don't have central office people, it trickles down to us. And then it goes right to our students, which is why we're a school district in the first place, right? For the students, we're a school. And just as a teacher, right, when we've had a central office that has been driven out by the majority of the board, that affects our administrators, and our principals are exhausted, which affects our teachers and staff, which affects students and families, and it's disheartening. That is going to affect the district at a whole other level. That is on your shoulders, right? That's not on our shoulders. We can do all that we're doing, and it's not being taken seriously. That is on the school board's shoulders, and the future of the district is up to you. And I want to thank you for the 3 of you who have been consistent in showing leadership and integrity, because that matters, even if it's difficult. But it is very hard to work and learn in an environment that is unsupportive, and we are feeling that. We are disheartened, exhausted, ready to leave, and we're here for the kids. And the kids are not being taken priority number 1 because of this trickle-down effect. It affects them. I have several people that I know in other school districts in Michigan, like, what's going on in Romulus? Why are you still there? Like, it's very embarrassing to say that you work for Romulus at this point in time because of these things, and it shouldn't be that way. We're doing our jobs. You know, if you are elected, that is your job to do, right? You were elected by the people to serve the people, and not your personal beliefs, right? Or not necessarily what's personally what you need. But the future of the district is completely on the shoulders of the board, but we're feeling it. We're doing our job. You need to do yours so we have a district in the future, because we might not. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cooper?
There's a few. From Toby Flenderson. How much is the stipend for extra work? The district has acknowledged staff are doing more work than what's in the contract at the district office level, but have not paid for teachers' overages for their extra work. From Ashley Hengy. My question is, what are you guys plan in regards to COVID cases? Are you guys going to shut down, or are you guys going to stay open to continue to keep getting confirmed cases from students and teachers? I get emails almost every week from the high school and middle school with a confirmed case. I'm getting to the point where I'm pulling my nephews out of the school and switching them to virtual learning because I'm worried about theirs, mine, and my children's health. From MK, it's a long one. No Clue Sue Evans. How does a long-term secretary in the district not know how to take proper minutes? Minimally, I would expect our school secretaries to be able to take proper notes, but you didn't take any for 3 months. What I didn't expect was the number of excuses you provided to the community for such a grave disservice. How about considering going back to school yourself to learn how to be a school board member? Nicole German, your disdain for our school community is on full display. You educate your child in a competitor charter school. You vote to put Dr. E on leave, someone that you stated you fully supported during your interview. You also vote for your superintendent to consult here while your district recruits our kids away. You fail to share with the community that your son was a finalist for an HR position, then vote against the women who got the job. Where's your sense of integrity? Oh, I forgot, you leave it in River Rouge on board meetings Mondays. Then to the board, I applaud the Gang of Four for all being in attendance today. We really got tired of all the texting to one another under the table. I am certain you were better coordinated this evening till we meet up again. From Simone the Pond, I think that's how you pronounce it. We as a student body were just given the opportunity to start in-person schooling again, and the actions of some of our Board of Education are putting us in position to lose the opportunity we just got back, which may put a lot of students in our district in a very hard position once again. From Wendy Pachota. With increasing COVID numbers, why aren't parent conferences virtual? It's important for parents to be able to attend, but in-person will deter many from doing so. Also, having in-person conferences potentially exposes more staff members. Why are we putting our staff members at risk when it is unnecessary? Conferences can effectively be done virtually. We absolutely need an HR director. We have been short-staffed since before the pandemic began. A few years ago, when I was the ELA department chair, we started the school year with just myself and one other English teacher at the subs. At that time, English teachers were easy to find, to hire, yet we remain short-staffed. Now that there is a teacher shortage, this makes hiring anyone more challenging, so when a prospective teacher applies, there needs to be an HR director ready to hire immediately, if recommended by the interview committee. Our students have been suffering for far too long. They're losing out on academics, which in turn is also causing behavior issues when you have multiple classroom jigsaw. James W. When Dr. Edmondson arrived, he was tasked with putting together the Romulus School's jigsaw puzzle. He did so, passed the millage for us, communicated openly and regularly to everyone in the community, sold our buildings, and made us money, protected the staff and students from the pandemic. He became the face of schools, not you. You don't like being faceless in the rebuilding of our district, so you destroy the puzzle, removing pieces, staff that held up our district, then tasked Mr. McNatt, a pawn from another district's puzzle, to fix whatever you think is the problem. Our community is embarrassed. Your leadership is shameful. Resign for everyone's benefit. We know what puzzle pieces we need to continue the process. Bring back Dr. E. From Goodwin. What has been accomplished since you put the superintendent on leave? Nothing but visible chaos and dysfunction. I have never seen a leader so blatant with her disregard. She discards staff. She disrespects her fellow board members. She ignores students. She uses the gavel more than Judge Judy, and she can't stay off that darn computer, which if you look now, she is most likely on. Romulus can do better. We must do better. Remove these clowns. I watched Dr. Edmondson endorse Sean Nat in March to replace him during his leave. I bet he regrets that decision now. What kind of friend or colleague would step into the chaos caused by the board and then disrespect towards its employees? Let's see, 90% of the 90% district of color. All new consultants are non-black, from attorneys to finance director to interim superintendent. Maybe this was the plan, was getting too black in there. Name one black person you hired since you put Dr. E on leave. Just one, anyone. Ms. Piles, what have you done since becoming president of the board? You chased out 4 central staff members. You forced out our effective superintendent. You established the Gang of 4. You isolated your hand-selected You hand-selected your successor to Dr. E. He has no chance of success. You endorsed Alan Lambert. We know how that worked out. You lost the support of the teachers as we supported you when you told us to align against Judy Kennard. You have no support in the community. You opened up the district to lawsuits. You use district money to rack up attorney fees. You argue with fellow board members and are combative with those who ask questions. You lie outwardly. You have sent this district spiraling down the tubes because you have to be right no matter at what cost. In all this nonsense, you don't have students in mind. But Ms. Piles, you have united us. The teachers, the bus drivers, the custodians, food service, central office, the community. We thank you for doing what no one else could have possibly been able to accomplish. We continue to push you out here. I'll make sure one. From David Pelk. Hello, my name is David Pelk, and this is my 21st year teaching in Romulus. I'm a reading interventionist at Barth Elementary. I'm writing to voice concern. I'm worried. I'm worried about us getting stuck and not moving forward. I look at our district scores and it hurts. Watching teachers work their tails off, it just doesn't make sense. How can we all be working so hard, but the scores continue to flatline? After losing sleep over this, it hit me. We are staying in the same place because we continue to do the same things over and over. Meanwhile, other districts are trying new things, new systems, and taking place and paying it off. We are living in a different world with a different world. We need to try new things. When Dr. Edmondson became our superintendent, it gave me hope. His hope gave me hope because he wants to make changes. He wants to invest in our schools, our teachers, and most importantly, our kids. He is listening to the needs of the principals, teachers, and parents, and most importantly, our students. I believe Dr. Edmondson when he says he wants to make an investment in our schools. The only way our district is going to move forward is if we make changes. These changes start with clear and honest communication. Then we communicate. We can design new, improved, and productive systems. We need communication. We need our board members to put trust and communication back into our district. We need to recruit more students. We need a leader who will not be micromanaged. We cannot continue to flatline. Our students and families deserve the best. Please let Dr. Edmondson do his job and let's follow his lead. Thank you for listening. From Peyton Thomas. Good evening, board. I came with just one comment, and that's thank you, Miss Wester, for coming on the 4th to watch me walk at the academic awards ceremony and being active for the students and on their behalf. It was pleasant to see you. The rest should speak for itself. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Comments from board members. Ms. Terrell?
I'm going to keep asking, because even with receiving this report, I don't feel like it is, we have a report before us, and the question has been asked over and over again, when is Dr. Edmondson coming back? I would like to know when he's going to come back. That is my question.
Well, we were just given all this information and,
But if the.
okay, so that's not something that, I know that's something the board has to discuss. And we just got this information.
But if the investigation is not relative to Dr. Edmondson, and the audit, or the investigator has provided us a report, which is what we were waiting on, report to come back, why can't we come up with a date now? That's my question. And I agree with the comment that we are spending a lot of money on consultants and outsourcing and identifying other sources. And I do believe that a plan may be able to be established with this. But again, my question is, why can't we bring back Dr. Edmondson if the investigation had nothing to do with him? It's not identifying him. Why can't we bring him back?
Ms. German, do you have anything?
I actually do have a couple of things that I do want to list. There was some comments made in regards to HR that I do want to address. Number one, I want to address the fact that I am a chair of the Personnel Committee, which allows me to ask questions and inquire about things. Number two, I did, throughout the whole issue with the HR assistant position and all these different things, day one, I was against it. It had nothing to do with anything, relatives or anything. I was against the position. Out of 7 board members, I've talked to 4 of them actually, but then I talked to a 5th one, and I also voiced my concerns prior to anyone being hired, anybody saying anything, because day one, I was against it. So if you know about administration and you know about AppleTrack, you know that when you apply for positions, you're applying for the entire Wayne County area, not just one district. So when you talk about my son and talk about, this was all about him, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Day one, go through the YouTube videos and see that I was totally against it. So you can FOIA wherever. I would have gave you the emails. Dr. Emerson called me 3 times, unsolicited, to encourage my son to apply for the position, which I was totally against. So let's stick with facts instead of you creating these narratives, because they're just not true. And if you want more information, you can go through my emails and see some of the dialogue that was expressed to Dr. Edmondson, to some of the board members, to Margaret Hazlitt, in regards to those things. So yes, absolutely, I was against that from day one. I voted against it every time it came up. So I do want to lift that. But I also want to lift that you all are looking at my son and saying, oh, he goes to another school. Have you asked me why he goes to another school? Ask the 2,500 students that are at Romulus Metro Charter Academy. Ask the 1,500 students that are at Summit Academy. And you will know, excuse me, I'm talking. You had your chance. But talk about the 2,500.
Ms. German has the floor, Mr. Green.
The 2,500 students that have not come to Romulus Community Schools because of what? Ask that question before you check with one, and know that you don't have a football program for my son. You have nothing for him, and that's why he's not here. But that's why I am here, so that I can be a change in innovation.
You need to stop.
But actually, if you want to know,
Ask the 2,500 that you don't see in your district. Ask that. Ask that. Ask that. Ask that question. 2,500 REA. You want to stick with facts? Stick with the real facts. Instead of it, you need to represent yourself when you're making inappropriate, defaming comments, and understand that you can get a lawsuit. You can. You can. I'm not even worried.
Okay, Ms. Sherman. Okay. 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 Ms. Evans? Ms. Evans, do you have any comment?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Ms. Wester? Okay, Ms. Wester has the floor. Mr. Green, Ms. German, Ms. Wester, you have the floor.
Again, I just want to thank everyone for coming out. Just like, I want to say thank you to Peyton T. Did not expect that, but I did. I showed up last Thursday for the awards recognition at the high school. It was amazing to see the first year 3.5 students. Then you had the second year, and there was 3-year 3.5 students. It was amazing to actually see the program coming back since we didn't have it last year with COVID. The kids it was nice to see the smiles on their faces and the parents' faces as they walked across the stage. Some got their letters, some got a medal. It was just really nice to see that come back. You know, that we're starting to bring certain activities back to the school so that parents can be involved. And again, just to piggyback off of Ms. Terrell, we've been saying, we got the report. Ms. Piles, President Piles, we need our superintendent to put this transition plan into work. Nobody else can do it. We said it wasn't personal. It was not against him. I want to make we need to
Okay,
set
Ms.
it back.
Wester has the floor. Please stop shouting out.
I've asked 2 weeks. I know you said we needed something written. We need our superintendent to lead the change that the audit has shown, that the investigation has shown. We all knew what needed to be done. We need to get him back so we can start this plan and in 6 months be able to say, we are where we're supposed to be. We're ready for that next audit. We're a month behind. They said December 6th, hoping, praying, because what happens, that holds up our funding. The longer we don't have this audit done, it holds up our funding. That department does. We all know it needs to be shaken up, stirred over, started all over again. We need our leader to do it. We had teachers talk about camaraderie. We have our students. They feel the same thing. When it attacks the top, it's a trickle-down effect. Our teachers struggle, our babies struggle. They hear the comments, they watch the videos, and they're saying, well, Mom, why are they acting like this, or why are they doing this when they tell us to do this? We ask a question. They ask us a question. They want us to answer. What are we teaching our kids? What are they seeing? They're seeing grown people bickering back about things that have become personal, that should not be personal. We say it's not, but just the actions, it shows them something different. And we need to show them that we care about them. To bring our superintendent back, the babies ask for him. They want him at certain programs and he can't be there. That support So I am begging, I am urging that we put this on the agenda to bring back our superintendent December 1st. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kennard?
Nothing at this time.
And I have nothing. So motion to adjourn? Moved by Pyle, supported by German. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned at 9, I'm sorry, any opposed? Meeting adjourned at 9:36. I know, I just have to ask that.